Hello and welcome to Purely Academic, your potentially educational podcast. This is the monthly stuff for August 2026. I'm Dr. Jonathan Lack. I write about movies. I teach cinema studies at the University of Colorado, and I have come up with such an intricately bleak monthly 10 for us this month that I worry this episode should come with some kind of mental health warning.
And I'm Sean Chapman, high school English teacher by day, otaku by night, and I find myself once again at that dreadful impasse where the halcyon days of summer break come to an end and yet another school year stretches before me.
I'm at the same point, Sean. I go back tomorrow. Classes don't start till Thursday, but work stuff starts tomorrow. I have to do an all-day faculty retreat. That'll be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah. For me, we had basically 1 week of the pointless stuff, then 2 more days of pointless stuff, and then I've had half a week with students back so far.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I imagine the students are more fun than the pointless stuff.
Yes, very, very much so. This is going to be a very interesting school year, though, because we have, I think, about 100 more students than we had last year total, and we've got, I think it's 9 fewer teachers overall at the school because of bullshit.
Jesus Christ.
Just to put it briefly. And so the first 3 days, luckily, I'm in a position where, because of the classes I teach, I'm doing ESL for newcomers, so English as a second language, and I'm doing co-teacher classes, which have a large portion of students that have IEPs or individual education plans, so they have special education needs, basically. So those classes by necessity are smaller, and I really lucked out that those are the classes I'm teaching this year, because I got a bunch of my coworkers that all of their classes are like 30, 31, 32, sometimes more than that students, and I'm sitting more at my biggest class is 26, which is manageable. It is going to be a crazy school year.
That's funny. I have a crazy year coming up because I have more students than ever. I have a full suite in my Intro to Film lecture, which is 165 people, that is capacity, plus a wait list. I have 50 people in my Studio Ghibli class, and that could get even bigger. That is the biggest elective I think we're doing this year. And I have another 30-some in another class. So I have about 250 students on my docket this semester, so that should be fun. Obviously, I do not work with them as closely as a high school teacher works with their students, but it is still a lot of grades to enter at the end of the semester.
Yes, yeah. It was very funny where at the first day back, because everybody knew this was the year we were coming in for, and it's just it's a crazy year for so many other reasons I'm not going to get into, but there's just so much shit going on. And the principal put up a metaphor that I think he didn't think through all the way, where he put up the poster for the movie 300, the Zack Snyder movie about the Battle of Thermopylae. He's like, it's the inspiring story. It's this 300 Spartans against this army. And he said of millions of Persians, which is not accurate. It was not millions. And then he said, and they fought them off for months and months. Also not accurate. It was 2 days. But the part he didn't get to was the part where they all die at the end. So I was I think he did think through this metaphor all the way, because while people like to use the Battle of Thermopylae as some sort of rousing story about bravery and all of this, what it really is a story of a, resounding military defeat of a bunch of guys, for complicated reasons, going into a military excursion that they have no hope of winning. They don't accomplish any meaningful objective. They only delayed the army for a couple of days, which is pointless, and they all get fucking slaughtered. And so I thought it's an appropriate metaphor, but maybe not in the way the principal originally intended.
Yeah, it's a very depressing metaphor, in fact, if you take it that way. Yeah, at best, you can read that as a story of a Pyrrhic victory, but I don't know if that's really inspirational for teaching school.
Yeah, it's don't worry, everybody will tell the story of your noble deaths at the end of the school year. Great, at least we'll be remembered.
Yes. All right. Well, what have we got on the dock today, Sean? We've got some news. We're going to talk about some of the recent news from Marvel and Disney, and just some movie news in general. I've had on the outline several times this year talking about the kind of crazy year the American box office has been having in film, and we've just never gotten around to it because it's been an even crazier year for video games utterly collapsing. And so we've always talked about that. So I want to go over some of that, and then we've got plenty of stuff. I've got more Street Fighter stories. I played Halo Campaign Evolved. You've been playing more Super Robot Wars and Genshin Impact. We're both on our bullshit, I guess is the way to say this episode.
Yes, it's a very much on our bullshit kind of episode. Just as a nice little palate cleanser getting into the school year.
Absolutely. All right. Well, before we get into any of that, a piece of housekeeping. We are excited to announce today. We finally are able to give the people what they want. This is an announcement I know some people have been asking about. The premiere date for Japanimation Station Season 6 Part 2, the second half of our Tomino-thon season, which we are calling The Tears of Time. We will be debuting the new season on Sunday, September 27th. With episodes airing 6 p.m. Central on YouTube and going live on all podcast platforms at midnight. Same schedule we had for the first half of the season, but it is coming back at the end of September, and it will be airing through, I think the last week of the season is the week before Christmas, so it'll be airing through late December. It'll be another 13 exciting episodes as we cover Tomino Yoshiyuki's career from 1984 to the present day, with Zeta Gundam, Gundam Double Zeta, Char's Counterattack, F91, Victory Gundam, Garzy's Wing, Brain Powered, no E, Turn A Gundam, Overman King Gainer, The Wings of Reen, and Gundam Reconquista in G. So it is kind of a Weekly Suit Gundam revival season to some point. But we've recorded about half of this season already, and it is so fun. I am very excited for people to hear everything we've got going this season.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited for this one because I think going into this half, I think neither of us really knew exactly what it would be like because, it's the first time we're ever recording podcasts on things we've already done podcasts on. But we have done already most of the Gundam episodes for that season, and I really love all of them. I think it's very interesting. Kind of a slightly different taste or format for the podcast for some of those episodes, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, it's a really different season of Japanimation Station, but I think a really fun, informative one. We've been kind of going overboard on the notes and the research and all of that stuff, so you will learn a lot. We've learned a lot. It's going to be very fun. If you want to hop on over to the Japanimation Station YouTube page, when this episode of Purely Academic is live, I should have up the announcement video for the season, which has the new edit of the theme song video, and it'll have the date announcement and all of that stuff, and we should have some images out on socials that give you the list of episodes and when they're airing and all of that good stuff. But you know the drill by now. Another core of Japanimation Station is coming, and it's going to be a good one.
Yes, very, very much so. I've been having so much fun doing the research and all the shit for this. This just, I feel like an internet archaeologist, just going through, particularly because right now we're recording episodes for the stuff that came out in the 90s, which is the most interesting period for research because it's like, the internet was kind of a thing, but not really a thing. And so you're finding scars of sources that don't exist anymore. It's a pretty interesting period, both of his career, but then also to kind of look back at and kind of uncover what was the story behind some of these really crazy shows he made.
Yes, absolutely. So look forward to that in a little over a month here, and we're excited for you guys to hear that as we finish off our year of Tomino. And then we'll get into new stuff next year with Japanimation Station. So I'm also excited for that because I love the Tomino stuff. I'm also excited eventually to move on to very different things because that's the fun of Japanimation Station.
Yes, there's an infinite number of anime topics that we can tackle. Too many probably for us to ever do.
There's an infinite number we could tackle. We cannot tackle all of them is the problem.
Yes.
So that is our curse. All right, you want to go on and talk about some news, Sean?
Yeah, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Well, I thought, so we're recording this in the midst of the Disney D23 conference, and so there's been a lot of Marvel and Disney news, and, we could talk about some of the Star Wars stuff. We know the name of Ryan Gosling's character for Star Wars Starfighter. It's Cade Alberon. Yay.
That sounds like, if I played Knights of the Republic and just hit the random name button a few times, It sounds like that would come up, sure.
They could, maybe if I were writing a Star Wars movie, that's where I would start, is just run through the random name generator, and then maybe you replace them later on, but just to have the names to write the story, that would actually be a fun way to do it. Anyway, so that's, we got some footage of that. That movie's real. The new season of Ahsoka is airing next year, a full 3.5 years after the first season. Do we still care about that? I'm not. It's interesting.
I mean, I'm excited for it, but of course I've seen all the shit leading up to it. But it is definitely one of those of where I watched the trailer. The trailer's cool. But there was this feeling hasn't it been 10 years since Ahsoka season 1 came out? The gaps between these things, even if there are only a few years, experientially that feels like an eternity compared to what I feel like a follow-up season should come out, which should be the next year. That's just the sane way to do shit. And yeah, like I'm excited to see it. I'm glad that there's a lot of Ghost Hayden Christensen in it, because honestly, that was a pretty cool part of the first season. And I think exploring Ahsoka and Anakin communing through the Force after all the Darth Vader shit is like pretty interesting, and Hayden Christensen did a very good job in the first season, and there's a shit ton of that in the trailer. Enough that I suspect that maybe most of what is in the show for that, it might have just been in that trailer, but either way, I'm very curious to see kind of where that goes. But it does feel like this sort of era of Star Wars is kind of coming to a strange conclusion, where it feels like they had all these plans for it to become a certain kind of thing, which would be, we have like 7 different shows. They're all going to lead to a Thrawn movie. That's clearly not happening. And so I'm curious to see where Star Wars goes post that, because this does feel like we're kind of wrapping up that era of the kind of Disney Plus version of Star Wars we've had up till now.
Or Dave Filoni says, fiduciary responsibility? What fiduciary responsibility? And just goes whole hog and just orders Lucasfilm to go all in on this stuff. And it's a full Thrawn trilogy that they pull all their resources towards.
You know, anything is possible. I think the time lag on this, if it took them 3.5 years or whatever to get season 2 of Ahsoka out, it'll take them like 12 years to get the Thrawn movie actually made, probably.
That's probably true. He does not actually have ultimate control over Disney's money vaults. He can suggest things to Bob. Well, it's not Bob Iger anymore. Whoever replaced Bob Iger, and it moves on from there. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Marvel and some of the stuff going on with the MCU, because we're in an interesting moment. The MCU does have a little bit of wind at their sails because of the new Spider. Did you see the new Spider-Man, Sean?
No, it had the...
Wow.
It's just the fortunate reality of it came out right when I went back to work, and I've just not been in the mood to go to a movie theater. If it had been on streaming, I would have certainly watched it. I just didn't want to bother with it.
You should see it. It's by far the best of the Tom Holland movies. I liked it a lot, and I did not like the last one that he was in at all. It's very good. I think you will like it a lot. It's very inspired by the Insomniac games, which is kind of surreal to see. Just all the action is like very clearly pulled from that, which is really cool. It's just not something you typically see, because typically we're used to Spider-Man games taking stuff from the movies, not the other way around. And now we're into the point where the games are so good that the movies are like, let's just borrow from that. But anyway, it's a very good movie. It sets up... I assume I can spoil that Sadie Sink is Jean Grey. You know that?
I already know that, yeah. Well,
everyone already knew that. Yeah. There is a moment, it's not anywhere near as bad as like in Star Trek Into Darkness when Benedict Cumberbatch looks into the camera and goes, I am Khan. And then it cuts to, Chris Pine trying to figure out how to play a moment where this character has no idea what that's supposed to be, right?
And it feels like they like hold for like the sitcom audience to go,
yes.
Oh.
Yes, it's not that bad, but there is a moment where they learn that the character's name is Jean Grey, and Peter is looking at a computer screen as it like comes up that her name is Jean Grey, and to their credit, they don't play it as like, Tom Holland isn't like, oh, Jean Grey, what is that? There's none of that. He's just like, oh, this is her name. But they do hold on the computer image. You can tell that someone at Marvel went, no, hold it for a couple more seconds because the audience is supposed to gasp here. And that does make me roll my eyes because it's like, it means nothing in the movie. It's only for the audience. But that's fine. She's a very good Jean Grey. Honestly, she's the first Jean Grey who's like recognizable as the character, really, in one of these, including being like terrifyingly, overwhelmingly powerful. But anyway, because of that, there's a very good Spider-Man movie, and it has a very good version of one of the core X-Men characters. We're kind of pointing towards the future of Marvel here, and so there's some interesting stuff to talk about. So, a few weeks ago at Comic-Con, we got news from Marvel on some of their future plans that's interesting to cover. The big one that I wanted to talk about was Ryan Coogler is officially returning for Black Panther 3. I think he'd always been, penciled in for that, but also he's Ryan Coogler, and I think if he wanted to go do whatever he wanted, he could. Yeah. So they have gotten him back. That is coming out December 2028, and they have cast the actor David Johnson as the new Black Panther. David Johnson is a really incredible actor, as you'll know if you've seen Alien Romulus, where he plays the android character there, or especially the movie The Long Walk, the Stephen King adaptation from last year. He is tremendous in that movie. He's really a phenomenal actor, and I think the announcement that, so he'll be playing T'Challa's son, who was introduced at the end of Black Panther 2. In that movie, he's a baby, so presumably some time jump or multiverse shenanigans are involved here, but I really, literally, I do not think there's a better actor on the planet they could have cast for this, and I think the fact that they are moving forward and just kind of doing a clean slate there is the right move. I think Black Panther 2 was an absolute mess of a movie, and it's hard to, blame anyone involved because Chadwick Boseman did, die as they were about to shoot it, and so They had to very, rapidly rewrite that script and kind of rework it as a vehicle for the Shuri character and some of that stuff. But also, Marvel did themselves no favors by forcing Ryan Coogler to include. That has some of the most, egregious, MCU bullshit of, we're going to set up 5 things that will never happen, including, half of that movie is devoted to setting up Ironheart, who I think they did eventually do the miniseries of on Disney Plus, but no one watched it.
Yeah, I believe that came out, but yes, my impression is that nobody saw it.
And again, that is a egregiously large part of that movie. So Black Panther 2 is an absolute mess. But Ryan Coogler is obviously extremely talented. Black Panther 1 is great. I said at the time, I will still say it now, they should have just recast T'Challa and kept telling the story, because I actually think it's more insulting to the memory of Chadwick Boseman to just say that character has to be dead forever when he is. But I think the fact that they are just taking whatever opportunity the new Avengers movies are giving them to advance the timeline, move forward, start with a clean slate, and have a Black Panther who presumably can be in more than one movie. Because the other thing, I've seen some people say, oh, they're passing over Shuri, that's sexist. If you know nothing about the production of Black Panther 2, I understand you saying that. If you do know that Letitia Wright was apparently a kind of a disaster on set and made that movie kind of hard to shoot and is apparently kind of a difficult person to work with, there might be other reasons why they might want to move on so that they can have an actor who presumably can be in more than one Black Panther movie. I think is probably what they want to do. And I think that is good because Black Panther 1, almost 10 years old now. It's 8 years old this year because it was 2018. And so it will be the 10th anniversary when this comes out. I'm glad that they'll be able to do more with it. That is a good thing.
Yeah, man, that's crazy to think about, that it's been that long. It will have been 10 years by the time this movie comes out since the first Black Panther. Yeah, it's just crazy how protracted these developments are. And obviously, Black Panther has a much more complicated reason for why the movies are more protracted. But it's also just interesting because it feels like Marvel is not really doing the sequels to existing superhero kind of thing all that much anymore. But I'm glad that they're still holding on with Black Panther, just because it never really felt like it got the proper run it needed because of Chadwick Boseman passing away.
Right. Well, and the whole sequel thing is weird because obviously some of their characters, they just ended, Iron Man and Captain America and a lot of those. Some of them have just kind of run their course, like Thor. And then all the characters they introduced in the new phases post-Endgame, none of their movies were big enough to get sequels. So, Shang-Chi, I think, should have had a sequel by now, but then that director, Destin Daniel Cretton, got moved on to Spider-Man, and understandably took the Spider-Man job because he has now made one of the highest grossing movies of all time,
yes,
and presumably is a very rich man. So good for him. But yeah.
Yeah. If you're for a purely financial decision, if people give you the option to make the Spider-Man movie or Shang-Chi Master of the Martial Arts movie, you should probably make the Spider-Man movie. I think that's going to get you a slightly bigger paycheck.
That would be true for literally anything. If it's Spider-Man or anything else, any other movie, yes, as we have seen, Spider-Man might be the most durable box office thing of the 21st century. Yeah. I saw some people recently saying, no, Spider-Man movies have bombed, like the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Oh, you sweet summer children. Those movies made $800 million a piece. You have no concept of what a bomb is. No Spider-Man movie has ever come close to bombing. That is box office gold.
Yeah, the only problem is that, they make so much money that the expectations are so huge that even if it slightly misses the insane marks that it's expected, people treat it like a bomb. But you're right, it's not even close to that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Spider-Man is a thing that does not lose money. But anyway, Black Panther, also very successful, and I am excited to see what David Johnson does with it. Because, this is just one area of Marvel where, there's a lot of untapped potential. Black Panther is an awesome character. You've got the whole world of Wakanda. Ryan Coogler is one of the best directors working. And he announced at the Comic-Con event that he's basically gotten permission from Marvel to shoot this new one the way he did Sinners on a mix of 70mm and IMAX. And Marvel does not let people shoot on film. So, that tells me that Ryan Coogler has some control over this that he did not have on Black Panther 2. And I think that is a very good thing because that should be a filmmaker-centric movie because he is one of the best working today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. They also announced a new Ghost Rider movie from the Deadpool and Wolverine / Night at the Museum director Sean Levy to star Ryan Gosling for release in 2028. I'm kind of mixed emotions on this one. I think the idea of doing Ghost Rider under the MCU banner it's kind of one of those of like, oh, this, I'm surprised it took this long to get here, because they've also hinted at the character in a lot of the like supporting media and whatnot. Ryan Gosling is obviously a really, really big get for them, and I think Ryan Gosling's in an interesting moment post Barbie where he seemingly is kind of willing to do whatever franchise wants to work with him, because he's also doing Star Wars. This is the same, I should say, this Sean Levy is also doing the new Star Wars movie. I think Sean Levy is a pretty bland director, but we'll see. Maybe he has more to him than we knew, and this could be interesting. Certainly Ghost Rider is not a character who has covered himself in glory on film before, so yes. This could be an improvement. And I also like the fun fact that in the original Ghost Rider with Nick Cage, the girlfriend in that movie was played by Eva Mendes, who is now Ryan Gosling's wife. And I just like that over 20 years of their life histories, they've both worked on Ghost Rider in different capacities. That's a very funny thing for that couple.
Well, I think you've already got the kernel for the script for like Ghost Rider 5 or whatever right there. Once we're full multiverse bullshit and we're like crossing over the Ryan Gosling Ghost Rider with the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider, but then Deadpool's going to be there too. And so Deadpool can make the jokes about it's like, aren't you married to that lady? Wow, that's crazy. It's just, it writes itself.
Absolutely. Anyway, so, that should be interesting. They're doing some stuff with new characters. And that's, the one thing I will say is, if it's Ryan Gosling and Sean Levy, that is a movie that will actually get made. That is not like some of the other Marvel stuff. Like, for instance, Kevin Feige also confirmed around Comic-Con that the Blade movie with Mahershala Ali is effectively dead. Maybe an object lesson in why you don't announce a movie when all you have attached is a star and a property, and not, let's say, a writer or a director or a story or any of that stuff. Which, like, to be fair, Marvel is usually pretty good at not doing that, but like it's been so sad to see the Blade thing go nowhere, especially because Blade is the original Marvel movie. Like, that's the thing that started modern superhero movies, is Blade in the late 90s, and it would be cool to see them bring Blade back, but it is not happening.
Yeah, it just was one of those where it does not surprise me at all that this movie never actually happened, because it just had that vibe of like, people said in interviews enough times that like, yeah, I'd be Blade. And then it's like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they announced that as an actual movie, and this is usually, it doesn't go that far. Usually it's just like some person just gets asked on a tour for a different film about like, hey, if you were in Marvel, wouldn't you love to be this guy? And like, yeah, sure, I would be that guy. And then somebody, inevitably publishes a story saying, and now they're making that guy movie. But this just ended up just turning full into, yeah, no, they're totally making it. We don't know who's doing anything other than the person playing the main character. They don't have any other part of it. And I just think that maybe the person who's playing the main character isn't the most central pillar of the actual production of the film, and therefore is not enough to announce a movie yet.
Yes, so anyway, no Blade, that is too bad, but we're moving on. The big news at D23 this weekend is that Marvel has formally unveiled their X-Men movie, which has been kind of a funny thing because they've been working on it. We know they've been working on it, but they haven't been able to say officially that they've been working on it, because I think they were trying to hide the fact that Sadie Sink is Jean Grey in Spider-Man, which everyone knew by the time that it was so fucking stupid. But yes, they are making a new X-Men movie. Obviously, it is going to be directed. We already knew Jake Schreier was working on some mystery Marvel movie. What could it be? It's X-Men. He did the Thunderbolts movie last year. But at D23, we got the main cast, which also means we know who the basic X-Men lineup is going to be. And it is obviously Jean Grey. Sadie Sink will be returning. You have Cyclops, played by Kit Connor, who is on the TV show Heartstopper. I haven't seen that, but that is what he is from. You have Storm, being played by Maya Boyd, who is this is her film debut, but she is a stage and musical actor. She's been in some prominent musicals. Emma Frost is being played by Samara Weaving, the awesome Australian actress who you might know from the Ready or Not horror films. She's been in a bunch of stuff. She looks exactly like Margot Robbie. One day she and Margot Robbie need to do a movie together as sisters or something, or identical twins, frankly, but I really like Samara Weaving. She's awesome. Rogue, this is like one of the bigger gets they've gotten, is Indy Navarrete, who is the star of the movie Obsession that made $500 million this year, and that is pretty stellar fucking casting. Like, I generally at this point kind of feel bad when my favorite young actors actors go to Marvel because I'm like, oh no, your career. But Indy Navarrete is smart enough and good enough, and Rogue is such a cool part that I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then for Professor X, they've cast. This is a very different casting for Professor X than they've done before, but this is Christopher Abbott, who's about 40 years old. He was on, you might have known him from the show Girls back in the day. He was in Poor Things a couple years ago. He was the main character in the Catch-22 TV show on Hulu, the adaptation of the Joseph Heller novel. But so that is on the younger side for Professor X, but also they're not trying to recreate the like Patrick Stewart legend of stage and screen kind of thing, which is probably a good move for that character.
Probably like if they're doing like OG X-Men, which this is not exactly the OG X-Men lineup, but it's, around that. That is actually a more appropriate age for Professor X. Like he should be in his 40s or like maybe early 50s at the oldest. Like he shouldn't be like super old.
Yeah. So anyway, that's cool. And then finally, the big get for them was Mr. Sinister is Adam Driver. And that's awesome. That's just a great pitch. Adam Driver as the big villain. And honestly, the most exciting thing is, who isn't on that list? No Wolverine. Thank God. They're not doing. It's an actual X-Men movie. It's not a Wolverine movie featuring certain X-Men. That is good. The weirdest thing, though, is we still do not have any confirmation on who's writing this movie. The last we heard was in April. Schreier said he'd enlisted Lee Sung-jin, who is the creator of the Netflix drama Beef, and the co-showrunner of The Bear, Joanna Kahlo. But whether they're writing from the ground up or reworking an existing draft is unclear. Those are two great writers. Like there's a lot of pedigree there. But like that's the biggest kind of unknown here. But overall, like I am honestly, it's weird it's taken them this long to do X-Men. I think it's weird that they've spent so long fucking around with the Fox X-Men again, because like it should be the easiest slam dunk. X-Men honestly is up there with like Spider-Man and Batman. It's like it is box office gold. Do fucking X-Men. And at the very least, it seems like what their plan is that the current Avengers movies are going to kind of wrap up the MCU as we know it, and then X-Men will be the big thing to relaunch it, and that is probably the smartest thing they could do at this point. So I am looking forward to this.
Yeah, like X-Men is obviously an awesome property, and it's just something of where the old Fox X-Men movies have, plenty of decent qualities to them. The biggest one being Hugh Jackman,
yes,
Wolverine, for obvious reasons. But the thing that they never did, and then obviously like Magneto and Professor X in those movies are really good versions of those characters. But basically everybody else is like fine to not good. And so getting a like really good version of Cyclops and Storm in particular, I think would be really awesome because those are great characters. They're really cool characters. The movie versions of them have been very kind of nothing so far. I'm fine with Famke Janssen's Jean Grey, but it's not like the kind of what I identify as Jean Grey as a character. So I think doing a better version of her. And then Emma Frost obviously is a super popular character, so sure, why not bring her? I guess she was technically in X-Men First Class. I think there was a version of a character that's supposed to be Emma Frost.
January Jones from Mad Men played a character named Emma Frost who had no resemblance to the actual Emma Frost, but yes.
I'm curious to see if they go full like crazy relationship drama shit that is like a typical kind of X-Men place. If you have Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Emma Frost all in a room together, like what happens? I'm just there's so many ways you can take X-Men. I'm very curious, like exactly what kind of flavor of X-Men they're going for. But I do think that there's so much untapped potential in that property, even with the huge number of movies they've made, partially because a lot of those movies are not good, particularly more recently, that there's just a lot that they can do with X-Men. So I'm with you. I'm pretty curious and interested to see what exactly this movie's going to be.
Absolutely. Sean, I've been playing the, in my fighting game obsession, I picked up the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting collection that Capcom put out. And that collection is such an interesting piece of, like, media archaeology. One, the games are very good and it's fun to play. But also, like, what Marvel versus Capcom meant in the 90s was X-Men versus Capcom. Yes. Almost literally, because the first couple games in that line are X-Men versus Street Fighter and then all of that. But even by the time you get to Marvel versus Capcom 2, which is the one with the just ridiculously large roster, it is almost all X-Men characters and then a couple of like Avengers-y characters. Like, you've got Thanos, Iron Man, Hulk, Spider-Man's in there. But otherwise it is mostly X-Men because X-Men were the shit in the 90s. And you go back to that and you're like, right, X-Men were the biggest superhero thing. they just never quite became that in movies the same way, in part because none of the movies are really ensemble X-Men movies about, like, the depth of that cast that would be perfect for a fighting game. Like, if any superhero group is going to be in a fighting game, it's the X-Men, because there's a billion of them and they all have fun powers. And, you know, they're just like, I was playing X-Men versus Street Fighter, I did the arcade ladder, and that's a team game and a 2-person team game, and so I just did Cyclops and Ryu from Street Fighter, and I was like, oh, this is so fun, because it's like there's such a similarity between like the like team leaders, and they both have basically fireballs, and Ryu has the literal ones and Cyclops has the beams, and it's like this is the kind of group the X-Men is, but they've never really done it on film that way. So, you know, I think X-Men is primed to be big.
Yeah, it is just really interesting because absolutely for most of Marvel's history, especially if you're going pre the MCU films, it's like Spider-Man has always been king, like with a fucking, you know, gold star. There's no question. Number 2, I would say certainly is X-Men. And then under that would be like probably Hulk, and then maybe Fantastic Four, in terms of just thinking about the like public knowledge, like how much media stuff, like obviously you had the old Incredible Hulk live action TV show was very popular. So Hulk got like a lot of media for a long time. But then because Marvel did not have access to the movie rights for X-Men, once the MCU became big, like Marvel itself, the comic books, the games, like that side of it, they so downplayed X-Men. Like, so that was one of the big things with Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, is that I believe there are no X-Men characters, or maybe like just Wolverine, but they cut out most of the X-Men characters in VCI because Marvel wanted to promote the characters that they had, that they could do in their movies and stuff like that, and have the cross-media promotion. And so there is just this weird period of like most of the 2010s, early 2020s, where it just feels like X-Men was this thing that sort of happened in these terrible fucking movies that kept on getting made, and you just couldn't believe that they still were making more of them at some point. That somehow people didn't get arrested after X-Men Apocalypse or something because it was just so bad, and they still made another one. And so, but like you had that weird little sphere, but then X-Men just kind of disappeared from everything else, and then you had Wolverine off in his kind of corner, but Wolverine's always been, you know, kind of an independent character in most media anyways. And so it feels nice between like this, you've got like, you know, a lot of X-Men characters in Tokon Fighting Souls and stuff. It just feels like Marvel is, because they got X-Men back, they're like, yes, we can finally celebrate this cast of characters. They obviously did the X-Men 96 TV cartoon, you kind of follow-up thing to the classic 90s show. So it just feels cool that X-Men gets to be back, and that Marvel doesn't have to be like coy about it in some weird way, which they were for such a long time.
And it does solve a problem for them, because I've seen some people look at the Spider-Man box office for Brand New Day and go, oh, superhero movies are back. And I'm like, no. Spider-Man is back. Spider-Man has never left.
Yeah, Spider-Man's not back because Spider-Man's just been swinging around the whole time since like the 60s. Like, he's just never been gone.
I think the moment we are in is, and I think you can call this superhero fatigue, is that there are certain evergreen characters that are always going to be popular. Every Batman movie is going to be big. Every Spider-Man movie is going to be big. If they made another Iron Man, that would be big because people love Robert Downey Jr., right? But like, I'm sorry, I really liked Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi isn't going to make $1 billion, right? And honestly, Shang-Chi shouldn't be making $1 billion. It would be okay if Shang-Chi was a $50 million little movie that had modest special effects. It probably would have been a better version of that first movie, honestly, if they hadn't had all the CGI budget, and that would be fine. But like, certain characters are evergreen, and I think X-Men is the biggest untapped evergreen character for Marvel. And, you know, when you came out of Endgame into the new stuff, Marvel made a lot of mistakes, but it is also true that they'd kind of used up all of their most evergreen characters that they, at that point, had access to. And so it does make sense that if you're going to launch a new era of Marvel, X-Men is kind of the only path you have.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. But then I also, while we're talking about this, we got to talk about the Doomsday marketing, Sean, because we've got Avengers Doomsday coming out this Christmas. And we did out of Comic-Con. So a few weeks ago, we had our first proper trailer of Doomsday, which is the one that's mostly narrated by Thor. Then out of Comic-Con, we got the trailer that they had been showing out of D23, we got the trailer that they showed at Comic-Con, and I think they showed at CinemaCon earlier this year, that is an actual, like, trailer for the movie with Dr. Doom and stuff. Just pause here for a second. You and I talked off the air a few weeks ago about how bad that first Doomsday trailer was. What have you felt about, like, the marketing for that movie?
Yeah, I just think it's something of where part of it is I just think that Marvel has such a huge aesthetic problem at this point,
Yeah.
because it's like it has just dug a hole into a certain kind of aesthetic that has always been there, but like it's just become more and more severe as time has gone on, and it just looks fucking like dated. Like just take any random shot from the trailers of what they've shown, and just the sort of like dour, overcast, bleak, desaturated aesthetic of these movies where there's no sense of color. Everything feels super artificial and super flimsy. There's no sense of like a grounded reality or texture to it. And it's not just like CGI or whatever. Like I think it's just every aspect of the production has that look, even when they're filming something on an actual practical set. It is the whole approach to how these movies look just is, I think, desperately ugly to me. And then I think the other big problem they have is I'm in the most recent trailer. I'm fine with what we're seeing of Doom here. I'm a little bit questionable about Robert Downey Jr.'s accent that he's going for, but whatever. Like I'm sure he's going to give in like a compelling performance. He's a very good actor. I think the problem that I just can't see for the movie is like who are the main characters. It's you get a lot of Reed Richards, the Pedro Pascal Reed Richards in the most recent trailer, which makes sense, except for there's just no intimation of the existence of Doctor Doom in that Fantastic Four movie they made, which feels a little weird. That I guess you'll have to set up that whole relationship in this movie. But you have so many characters that are on display that you see in vague shots and moments. You've got clearly like, and probably a lot of these will only be in a single scene in the movie or something, but the Fox X-Men are in there and all that kind of stuff. But there's just no sense of that kind of grounding focus, because the grounding focus they used to have was Iron Man and Captain America. Obviously, Captain America is back in this. And maybe the way he's actually used in the movie will fix this, but there's something about he was done. We finished that character. Obviously you can bring him back. It's not like it's narratively impossible, but it doesn't feel like, at least based watching the trailers, like that character can serve as an effective anchor again because we have used him up. And we've got they tried to do we're doing a new Captain America, and that seems to have just totally fizzled out. And then you've got Thor left, but Love and Thunder was a real shit movie. Like that's a real piece of shit film they made. And I feel like Thor just feels so old hat at this point. And he was also, while he's, kind of Avengers royalty, he was never one of the central anchors. And so there is just this weird gaping hole at the heart of this movie, at least in the marketing. And who knows, again, this is all just marketing. The movie itself might not have any of these problems. They might have a really great way of pitching and constructing the story. Who knows? But the marketing, I think, has for me a big issue of I have no vision of what the fuck this movie is other than Doctor Doom is in it. And that's the only thing that they can pitch about it is Doctor Doom is in this movie. What's the plot? Have no idea. What's the premise? No idea. Who is the main character or who are the main characters? I have no fucking clue other than that Doctor Doom is in it.
Yeah, that second trailer at least has the focus of the Fantastic Four, which should be I would say those should be your anchor characters. But then you have the problem of the Fantastic Four were in a literal different universe and have never met the rest of Marvel. And I also know that behind the scenes that what we've heard through the grapevine, and maybe this isn't true, but the reports were that the original shooting script of Doomsday was very Fantastic Four centric. Then Fantastic Four came out and it only kind of did okay at the box office. It didn't flop, but it was not a big return for Marvel. And so Marvel execs basically were like, in reshoots, we need to de-emphasize the Fantastic Four. And you can kind of feel that push and pull in the trailers of who is actually going to be the center here, because it's going to be hard to do a big Avengers movie if only a small portion of the audience saw the Fantastic Four movie, right? You could get away with that in original Avengers where everyone had seen Iron Man, and then some people had seen Thor, Captain America, Hulk. But if everyone had seen Iron Man, at least you were good, right? And you could pull everyone in on those other characters, and that just doesn't exist here. So it's a weird problem. I will say I completely agree with you about the visual aspect, Sean. Those are some of the most ass-ugly trailers I've ever seen. And I think the big problem here is that they went back to the Russo brothers. And I just think that is the most thuddingly dumb thing that it's the biggest red flag for me on these movies, is the Russos. They did a good job with what they were given on their original Marvel run up through Avengers Endgame. I think their movies are visually problematic, but they did a good job with like the ensemble and some of that stuff, right? In the intervening years, they have proven to be some of the worst directors in Hollywood. They have not evolved their style whatsoever. But also in the intervening years, Marvel has kind of quietly started to fix their visual problems. If you look at some of their recent movies, like Thunderbolts by Jake Schreier, I'm not going to say any of these are great-looking movies, because I don't think they are. But that is a better-looking movie. That one was shot by Andrew Draws Palermo. It has a better look to it. It has some like good images, some good practical stuff. Fantastic Four First Steps had that phenomenal production design and like use of the kind of blue and white colors and stuff. Spider-Man Brand New Day, a huge step up from the other Marvel Spider-Man movies. Like, it's nowhere near the Raimi movies or anything, but it's like Destin Daniel Cretton and his DP clearly like thought about how to make big images that feel like splash pages, and they did stuff like Spider-Man's suit is so practical in Brand New Day that one of the points of contention has been whether it's too practical, because like you can really prominently see Tom Holland's ears in the mask and stuff like that, which I think is actually great. I think the choice to just go back to basics and be like, no, it's a suit and it's a guy in a suit really helps ground that movie, because in the last couple of Tom Holland movies, the suit was CGI and he was not there on screen. And so, that fixed it. Even Captain America Brave New World, a movie absolutely everyone hated, I will defend the visuals of that movie. That is a decent looking Marvel movie. That was shot by Kramer Morgenthau, who shot some of the better looking Marvel movies. They shot it to kind of look like 70s 35 millimeter. So like other directors, particularly their younger slate of newer directors, have done a better job with this. But then you've got the Russos coming back in to make what honestly looks like AI slop at a certain point with some of that imagery. The big one for me is there's the big money shot of Thor going after Doom at the end of both of these trailers, and Thor brings all the thunder and Doom raises the two fingers and stops the axe. That should be a really cool image. My problem is that the backdrop they are in looks identical to the end of Endgame when they're fighting Thanos. And it's like, you have to have more variety than this. It looks too similar to what's come before. And it feels like a regression from the last couple of Marvel movies that did actually make efforts in this department.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it, is just like this sense of kind of just going backwards, because Marvel has not figured out seemingly how to effectively go forwards again. There's just this desperate sense of we got to go back to what used to work, but I'm not convinced that what used to work is going to work. And I can tell you it's not working for me based on these trailers. Like I really loved those Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. I think were great movies for that moment, but the reason they worked was because of all the momentum coming into them, because so much great work had been done to build up all of these characters. And the one thing that like the Russo brothers were really effective at, in conjunction with Kevin Feige and the rest of the team at Marvel, was at balancing all these big personality characters that were so likable and charismatic and distinctive, and being able to feature them all very effectively in these movies. And it just feels like that aspect of Marvel just doesn't work anymore, partially because they spent all those characters and they were not effective at building up a new set of them. Like I will always just kind of mourn that Shang-Chi never got the treatment that Captain America and Thor got and stuff like that in those old movies, where it felt like it wasn't just there was like the one movie with these characters. You felt like you got to see these characters and grow with them, and that you got a movie every couple of years. And then now it's like, you get a movie, it's still good, and it's a cool movie, and it's got problems, it's not perfect, but Shang-Chi was a great character. And then that movie feels like it's from an ancient, prehistoric period at this point. It feels so old. And it's just very frustrating.
The only character in the post-Endgame environment that was introduced post-Endgame that they've really managed to pull through Marvel from then to now is the Florence Pugh character, the new Black Widow, who was introduced in the Black Widow movie, but then she's been in almost every Marvel thing since then. She obviously is the main character of Thunderbolts, but she's in Spider-Man Brand New Day. She was in some of the other movies. She was in some of the Disney Plus shows. She's shown up a lot, and she's kind of felt like an anchor. But I love Florence Pugh, and I like that character. The new Black Widow, who was the sister of Scarlett Johansson, is not your anchor for a new Avengers movie. It doesn't work that way. So they've got issues. But we do, I think, have a clearer sense of where Marvel is planning to go. We know Doomsday is this year. Secret Wars is next year. Those are the only mainline Marvel movies both years. Spider-Man obviously being, a Sony co-production. Then after Secret Wars, we've got 2028 is going to be their first year where they're bringing back multiple movies, and that's going to be X-Men, Ghost Rider, Black Panther 3. Past that point is unclear. The only other announced movies we have all been canceled. Blade, Armor Wars, which was going to be the Don Cheadle movie, and Shang-Chi, the sequel. All of those have either been officially canceled or put on the back burner. TV has also dramatically slowed down. They showed off a little bit of Vision Quest at D23, and that is the last of the MCU shows that was ordered in that sort of post-WandaVision Big Bang, and then they're done. Like, the only other live-action show they're working on is Daredevil Born Again, which is an actual TV, it had TV roots, obviously. That's not an extension of a movie or anything. And otherwise, they're mostly doing animation on TV, which I think makes total sense. I think that probably should be the split. Maybe they could get more of that kind of Marvel Netflix era energy and do more stuff like Daredevil. I would love to see that, but I think it would be smart to have a split where you have like your TV heroes and your movie heroes, and maybe they're just separate because it works better that way. Certainly Daredevil has always worked better that way. And past that point, I think 2028 could be promising. I think that's a decent slate they've got planned, and whether I like Doomsday and Secret Wars or not, if they do kind of fulfill their promise of kind of wiping the slate clean, and this is one of your big comic crossover events where at the end all the continuity is reset, maybe we're in a better place. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need a Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's how we get past this.
Yeah, and then you make 5, 6, 7 movies, and then you start. It's like, oh, but here's a character, the one character who has memories of the old continuity, and he knows that there's some extra dimensional being, and that the only way to solve it is to get the characters from the old universe and to team up with the characters of the current universe. It's like we gotta, eventually we gotta fuck it up again somehow, because it is. I've made this point many times on the podcast over the years, but it is one of the most amusing things about having now seen this kind of full arc of the MCU, it is just how closely mapped on it is to an accelerated version of just what American comic books are and what they turned into. And that it's just all the same pitfalls they ran into, and they just replicated all of them beautifully. And so I just have a lot of faith that they will continue to do that. I'm very excited to see all the kind of B-list superheroes die in these 2 Avengers movies coming up. Obviously, that's what they're doing with the Fox X-Men, that those are going to be all the characters that you kill to have your dramatic impact in the movie, because that is how these crossover stories work. Is here's the ones we can throw, the bodies we can throw into the fucking furnace to heat up the emotional stakes of this big multiverse crossover story. And it's just amusing to me that with these cycles that we see happen over and over again, and it's just in a different medium.
Indeed. So that's what's going on there. Kingdom Hearts also got a big focus at D23 this year, which was kind of funny because Kingdom Hearts obviously is the Disney, game, but it usually does not get showed off at Disney events because Disney, I think, has a weird, kind of finding it cringe energy. But it actually got a big focus this year, and I thought it would be fun just to mention. They did do a big new trailer for Kingdom Hearts 4, showing off a world based on the Pixar film Coco, which, in some synergy, also was announced to be getting a sequel. That's kind of the only modern Pixar film that's gotten a sequel. And then a release window for Kingdom Hearts 4 of late 2027. So honestly, I would not have bet money on Kingdom Hearts 4 getting its release date confirmed at D23, but there you go. And then Nomura Tetsuya, the creator of Kingdom Hearts, was there for a panel and to announce a new Kingdom Hearts anime that will air on Disney Plus and the Disney Channel, though we don't have any real details on it yet, like which studio is working on it. That sounds promising to me. It does. I've always kind of felt like the ultimate form of Kingdom Hearts is some weird convoluted anime and not a video game, so that's interesting. Disney has gotten to a place where they're finally willing to embrace the madness of Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I do, I gotta say I admire the resilience of the Kingdom Hearts fan base, because I feel like they all hated fucking Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yes,
I
they
feel
did.
Like the sentiment around that game was hugely negative, but everyone seems super stoked for Kingdom Hearts 4. I'm like, that's cool. I'm glad that, I kind of thought that maybe Kingdom Hearts 3 broke them a little bit, but I don't think there's anything that can break the Kingdom Hearts fans. I think, they've got powerful souls, and so they just seem like they're very stoked for it. I watched the trailer, and I just couldn't get past Disney being like, oh, I think we found a secret to bring back Sora. And I just can't do it. I think I can get into the anime bullshit. I just can't deal with the Disney shit. I just can't do it. I can't deal with fucking Mickey wearing a leather coat and looking through magic tomes to try to bring back his anime friend. It's just very hard for me to deal with.
Well, they're doing a full port of the whole series to Switch 2 later this year, so maybe I've been threatening this for like 15 years on this podcast. When will I finally do my Kingdom Hearts playthrough and report back to the podcast? But maybe the time has come, because I have been perpetually fascinated by these games, and I've experienced them secondhand through my brother, who is one of those, erstwhile Kingdom Hearts fans who sometimes is most of the time actually brutally disappointed in it, but always coming back. So it is like watching a friend in a, like, not an abusive relationship, not like anyone's doing anything wrong, but like a toxic relationship, right? Yeah. Of like this, you're not right for each other, but you can't leave each other. So maybe in that way you are right for each other. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's, I guess I admire that it feels like it did not take them all that long to make this one. Like, the Kingdom Hearts 3 just was this eternal journey. My heart broke for the Kingdom Hearts people, because they just, like, kept on getting weird 3DS games and shit like that. And they're like, when does Kingdom Hearts 3 came out? And then Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and they're like, it was a monkey's paw wish. Hopefully this one will be good. I want the Kingdom Hearts people to be happy.
And hey, the Final Fantasy Versus 13 people are also going to be happy, because after 20 years, we're getting that game in Kingdom Hearts 4, seemingly, because Tetsuya Nomura has bones to pick with the industry, I guess, and he just cannot let go of Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy Versus 13, which is funny to me.
Yeah, when do we get Sora and Noctis, and then other Noctis I want 15 Noctis and Versus 13 Noctis and Mickey Mouse. I want them all on a team together fighting some sort of existential evil.
Well, if you're going to have the two Noctises, you've also got to have like Mickey and Steamboat Willie Mickey and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and just have a whole Avengers team of different versions of the same character.
You know what? I think what I need is I want them to do Kingdom Hearts, but to like do the more like slightly more niche Disney movies. Like, because it's like I also want like Goofy, but I don't want Kingdom Hearts Goofy. I want like Goofy movie Goofy. Like, I want to see Sora in the scene in that movie where it's like Goofy and what is the Bluto or whatever his name is, the big one, and they're in like a hot tub. Yeah, Pete, that's it. Thank you. The Bluto, that's
that's Popeye.
Yeah, that's Popeye. But they're in like a hot tub together, and they're like talking about their complicated father-son relationships. I want just fucking Sora to just be there, just like in this conversation. It's like
I think Pete has a cigar in that scene because it was the 90s, and you could still do that in an animated movie.
It's like, I want that kind of shit, because those are the kind of Disney movies that I liked. I was never all into the kind of more mainstream shit. So it's like, I want the weird Disney movies in just those to be represented.
Okay, I want that, but then I also want the world based on an extremely goofy movie, the one where he gets super into the X Games.
Yes.
And then you could have, like, basically the mechanics of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but with, like, Goofy and Max, and they're learning how to skate, and then Sora comes in with his skateboard. It'd be great.
Yes, yeah, that's what we need, and then the sick pop song at the end. Let's do it.
Yes, Hikaru Utada over all of it. It's going to be great. Yeah, that's the best thing about Kingdom Hearts is we get big new Hikaru Utada singles, and they're fucking phenomenal. So, all right. Sean, the other piece of news I wanted to talk about is something I've wanted to discuss all year, but again, we've kind of never had time for it, which is that the box office this year with movies in 2026 has been on fucking fire in a way that we have not seen since the pandemic, and it kind of fascinates me because it's not just like a bunch of big franchise movies have been big. There's been some of that, but also like certain movies have been big in ways that like feel like movies are changing for the better in some cases, and also just like, people always want to say that movies are dead and movie theaters are dead, and then history keeps proving people wrong, and this year has been doing that. So if you will allow me to recap this, Sean, can I go through all this? So, again, 2026 has just had a bunch of significant film hits at a higher rate we've seen since 2019. 2019 was the last year before COVID, and 2019 also happened to be the highest watermark for box office in movie history. So you've had, let's see, just recapping these, the Michael Jackson biopic grossed over $1 billion. It's the highest grossing biopic ever. The Super Mario Galaxy movie made $1 billion. It's the second highest grossing video game movie ever, only behind the first Mario movie. Not the one with Bob Hoskins, the one with Chris Pratt. Yeah, the 1993 movie did not.
Dreams that the Bob Hoskins Super Mario movie made $1 billion. I'm like, they deserve it for the sick dinosaur puppet in that movie.
Indeed. The Devil Wears Prada 2, which is actually pretty good, made a fucking insane $691 million, more than doubling the take of the original film 20 years earlier. Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling became a genuine word-of-mouth hit that grossed $684 million, a bit more than its sort of sister film, The Martian, did 11 years earlier. It also became MGM's biggest domestic hit ever, outgrossing Skyfall from 2012, just within America. Skyfall made more worldwide, but just in terms of America. Toy Story 5 has grossed $1.1 billion. It's the franchise's highest-grossing movie, which has continued a 5-film, 31-year trend of every Toy Story making more than the one before. Toy Story is truly the Spider-Man of Pixar movies, if we're going with convoluted metaphors. Then you have had the back-to-back hits of July that really ripped the roof off. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey made over $1.1 billion worldwide. It is still going strong as we record this. It's held remarkably steady week to week to become Nolan's highest-grossing movie ever. I think that is fucking nuts. Christopher Nolan made 3 Batman movies. And now his highest-grossing movie is an R-rated 3-hour adaptation of a 3,000-year-old poem. Holy shit, that guy's career, whether you like his movies or not, what the fuck? Like, this is going to be one for the history books of, like, figuring out, like, wait, he made the Batman movies and then he made bigger? That's crazy. But yeah, and that also became the highest-grossing IMAX release ever, which was a record held for almost 20 years now by Avatar. And by highest-grossing IMAX, I mean within IMAX theaters, like what took in the most money from IMAX venues. Then you had Spider-Man Brand New Day, which, like, very clearly kind of snowballed off of The Odyssey because Tom Holland, is a star of both of them, and Zendaya's in both of them and all of that stuff, and John Bernthal, like, half the cast is in both of those movies. But that defied all expectations. It opened at $360 million domestically. That is the biggest opening weekend of all time. Took the record from Avengers Endgame, which was about $355 million. And then number 3 is Spider-Man No Way Home at $260 million. So these movies are in just a total category of their own in terms of opening weekend. Spider-Man was also huge internationally. It's held very well week to week. It's grossed about $1.8 billion worldwide so far. It's broken just about every record it could, including becoming the fastest to $700 million at the US box office. And there's a very real chance it takes the Star Wars Force Awakens title of highest grossing movie at the domestic box office. That one is in the like $950 million range. But then in terms of the actual future of Hollywood, I think all of that kind of pales in comparison to what happened back in the spring when we had the back-to-back releases of the horror films Obsession and Backrooms, directed by 26-year-old Curry Barker and 20-year-old Kane Parsons, respectively. Obsession became basically the biggest word-of-mouth hit kind of in movie history. It opened to a solid $17 million domestically, which is great for a little horror movie that cost less than $1 million to make. But then it just got bigger and bigger week after week. It was the first movie that opened in wide release since E.T. in the 80s that had a bigger week 2 and week 3 than week 1. And then it just continued kind of growing and growing. It is still playing in many theaters today in August, 4 months later. It's grossed almost $500 million on a budget of just $750,000, which makes it one of the single most profitable ventures in the history of the movie industry. And then Backrooms opened a few weeks after Obsession. It was on tracking for a $20 million opening, which again would be very good for a cheap horror movie. It instead opened to $81 million, just completely blew off all expectations, which was almost the exact same number that the new Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu, had made the weekend before. Parsons thus became the youngest director to ever open a movie at number 1 at the US box office, taking the title from Josh Trank for Chronicle in 2012, who took it from Steven Spielberg for Jaws in 1975. I'm glad that award does not go to Josh Trank anymore.
Yeah,
that's nice.
That makes a very interesting sandwich, doesn't it? With a very disgusting middle.
Yes. And Trank and Spielberg were respectively 27 and 28, and Parsons is 20. So I don't think that record is going anywhere anytime soon. Backrooms went on to make about $400 million. It is A24's highest grossing release to date. A24, which, I think we would have considered kind of not an indie studio, but maybe kind of on the path to becoming a mini major is what we would have called it in the 90s. I think it is fully now in that kind of mini major position, having made a movie this big. Both Barker and Parsons came from internet filmmaking. Barker had created the sketch comedy YouTube channel That's a Bad Idea, and Parsons had initially produced Backrooms as a YouTube series based on the viral creepypasta trend. You combine all that with the January release of the Markiplier film Iron Lung, which made $50 million on a $3 million budget, and we're seeing a huge explosion of web-originated filmmaking in 2026. And then, there's a lot of year left to go. December is the year's going to end with the Dune 3 Avengers Doomsday pile-up. You've got a new Hunger Games. You've got a new Jumanji. If you're like, Jumanji, who cares? The last two Jumanji movies both made $1 billion. No one knows this. No one remembers this. I remember this. It's a crazy thing about those movies. You've got a new Meet the Parents movie. Again, don't scoff. One of those made $500 million. You've got the new Iñárritu film Digger with Tom Cruise. Iñárritu's last big movie, The Revenant, made $500 million. And then plenty of smaller films that could pop off in interesting ways. So it's possible that not only will we get back to that 2019 high watermark, but we could surpass it by the time all is said and done here, especially if Doomsday actually does well, which I'm still kind of skeptical of. I think it's going to do okay, obviously. I don't think it's going to lose money. I just don't know I don't think it's going to post Spider-Man numbers, but we'll see. But there's a lot of year left to go, and I just think there's a lot of interesting trends going on within all of that, to me, as someone who cares about movies and follows this,
Yeah, it seems like there's a nice spread, right? That you have some of these expensive top level movies that are working off of, primo IP like Spider-Man and the Odyssey. I mean, there doesn't get more primo IP than the Odyssey. I hope Homer is enjoying, the residuals he's getting, 2,800 years later. But these big movies, but then you have, these kind of, Gen Z movies in terms of, I assume probably the audience, but also in terms of the people making them, of, the workhorse of the film industry, the horror genre, just doing it, always. And
Always.
that just feels really nice, that it feels so much more healthy than it has been in a very long time, as you said, since COVID. And I do feel kind of, this is a very casual anecdotal thing, but in my first couple of days back in the classroom, I do, kind of icebreaker conversation kind of things. And I did one that was a 4 corners activity where I put a topic on the wall with 4 potential answers, and you move to one of the corners to the answers and discuss with the other people in that corner something about that topic. And I had a couple that were kind of movie based, like, what is your favorite genre? It's action, horror, sci-fi, whatever. And just kind of going around and talking to a bunch of, 14, 15-year-old kids. I felt like there were more of them who knew what movies were. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but if you haven't talked to a lot of young people, you might not realize that some of them just don't have any affinity for movies in the movie theater. I know I talked about this story last year, that I had multiple students ask me, how do you go see the new Demon Slayer in a movie theater? And I had to explain to them how you go see it, that you have to go to a place to go see it and buy a ticket, or you obviously just order the ticket online, and that it's not on Netflix, or it's not on Crunchyroll, or you can't just, type Demon Slayer movie free streaming on Google and find a weird link to watch it through. And that for a lot of young people, particularly if, they don't have more affluent families, part of it is just the expense of going to the movies is a big barrier. But it's just this sense of there's not as much of a cultural kind of, unity around the experience of going to the movie theater. And I feel like this upcoming generation, because, when you're talking about kids these young, every year you see different trends really distinctively. And I do think that it feels like there's a bit more of a relationship that a lot of these kids had with the movie theater. And I talked to some of them in the action movie corner about John Wick. A lot of them talked to me about Spider-Man. And I had to pretend that I had seen the movie because I didn't want to have that conversation. But because I introduced myself as someone who really likes Spider-Man, but I hadn't actually seen the new Spider-Man movie because it just came out at the worst fucking time for me to see. But I want to just be able to talk to them about some of that stuff. And it is interesting to me that I do think that there's, certainly not as much of how ubiquitous it felt when we were that age, but much more so than the past couple of classes I've had the past couple of years, a sense of, oh, these kids actually watch movies. And I think that that's what you're seeing maybe with some of this obsession in back rooms. Is that maybe also those kids that I had are getting a little bit older, and they're starting to go see movies, and that that some of that malaise of the COVID years is starting to pass. And I think you're seeing that in how kids behave, the way that they converse with one another. And I think that impact is, you're now seeing that in the movie theater as well.
Yeah, and Sean, this isn't just anecdotal. There is data to back this up that Gen Z has become, like, I think demographically the biggest money spenders on movie theaters. Like, it's become, like, nature has basically healed, because that's always been true, that, like, the 18 to 30 set has been one of the biggest targets for Hollywood at the box office, but that had kind of gone away post-COVID, but it has started to correct itself, and we're kind of back to this. And you can see that in the numbers for some of these movies, because, like, I really do think the biggest story this year is Obsession. Like, one, that is a great movie. It's, if you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic horror movie, and the performances, particularly by Indy Navarrete, are just great. But it is also, when you said earlier that horror is the workhorse of the film industry, that could not be more true. Like, this is just over and over again through film history. It is horror that kind of points the way towards the industry. I mentioned A24 really becoming kind of a mini major now, off the back of Backrooms and some of the other stuff they've done. That's how it always happens. New Line Cinema, before they made Lord of the Rings, was the not Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street studio. And they came up through doing big horror stuff, and then they transitioned into even bigger stuff. You know, if I were a big movie studio right now, and I had $200 million, if I'm a producer and I had a $200 million budget that I could put either into a new superhero movie or to 20 $10 million horror movies, I would do the $10 million horror movies, because if one of those hits, you're in the black, right? And if two of them hit, you're a genius. And probably more than two of them hit, because horror has a pretty good batting average at the box office. And so, we are in an interesting place. I think the fact that for a long time, it's not like internet filmmaking is anything new. That's been going on since we were kids. But this is the first year where we've seen, I think, people who really did come up on the internet break big in the film industry, because Hollywood has been really, really resistant to hiring out of YouTube. It's not like, the 90s where Hollywood hired everybody out of music videos, and that was a very obvious place to do it. You would think YouTube could kind of be that for the 2010s, 2020s, and it just never was. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that now, because filmmaking is filmmaking. And if you saw those, backroom shorts that Kane Parsons did on YouTube, that's really good filmmaking. Like, that guy clearly knew, and if you listen to him talk, he's much wiser than his, 20-year age would, I think, suggest. And so these guys know what they're doing, and it's really cool to see. So I'm loving it. I'm enjoying a lot of movies. I think it's cool. And I just do want to go back. The one other thing is Chris Nolan also, like, the big lesson I am taking from his career at this point is anything can be a blockbuster if you fucking market it like one. Because you made the joke earlier about the Odyssey being the big IP, but let's be perfectly honest. If anybody other than Chris Nolan had made the Odyssey, it would have been a December release in New York and LA that would have gone wide in January for an Oscar push and would have been played like an art house movie, because the industry assumption would have been, old stodgy poem based on the thing you had to read in high school, that is a dry adults movie for awards plays mainly, and we're mainly aiming it at the Oscars. Same thing with Oppenheimer a couple years ago. Anybody else makes a biopic of Oppenheimer, it's a December release in New York and LA going wide in January. And Chris Nolan says, no, you're putting it out in July, and you're giving it a big marketing budget, and you're giving me a lot of money to make it, and in turn, I will make you a lot of money. And hey, guess what? It fucking works. If you make your movie with big movie stars and big production values, and it's really good, and you market it well, you can kind of make anything a blockbuster. And that's one of the biggest things that I hope people take from Nolan's, recent career, is that he is not doing anything that you would say is like conventional for a hit. Biopic of the guy who made the nuclear bomb, new adaptation of the Odyssey. These are not what Hollywood would typically think as money trains, and they are. And that should change the calculus for everybody.
The question is, will it? Because
no, it will not. But
that's always the frustrating thing in the history of Hollywood, is that there are oftentimes very clear signs that point to a better way to do things, and then they're like, but what if we brought back Pirates of the Caribbean? What if we did that, guys? I think that would be a great idea.
Indeed. So anyway, at least, thank God, again, whether you like his movies or not, I'm glad Chris Nolan has the clout to do this, because he is getting real movies into theaters by hook or by crook, and that is nice.
Very much so. And I hope, maybe hopefully he listens to our podcast, and he listens to my monthly 10, so he has like a bunch of other options of projects to explore, or any of the filmmakers I suggested. I'm still waiting for some of those.
Who the hell knows? See, honestly, at this point, his career is very unpredictable. He just, you would not have guessed coming into the 2020s that it was going to be Oppenheimer and The Odyssey, and they were both going to be like his two biggest movies ever. So who the hell knows what we see next? All right, Sean, do you want to go ahead and talk about what we've been up to this summer? Do some stuff.
Yes, we've got a nice, very eclectic stuff section here, Jonathan.
Why don't you pick one first, since I was talking a lot during the movie section?
All right, let's continue on my Ultraman journey, which I have been on. It's one of the great things about summer is I just have more time to do Ultraman stuff, and I have arrived at a very fascinating period in the history of Ultraman. The last Ultraman I talked about on here was Ultraman Mebius, which is like 2006, 2007, and just as a recap, that is the show that kind of brings back the old continuity of the original Ultraman shows, brings back a bunch of the monsters, brings back the old actors playing the original characters, the crossovers with Ultraman and Seven and Ace and Jack and all this old Ultraman guys. And Ultraman Mebius is very successful, but unfortunately it leads to a sort of odd kind of middle period that lasts from about 2007 till about like 2013 or so, where you get these like an eclectic range of shows and movies that are broadly under this banner of Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle. Now, Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle is, as far as I understand it, was like an arcade-based card game in Japan. There are lots of these kinds of things. Like every major IP has had them, where it is a combination of a collectible card thing, but also a big arcade game where it scans your card and that gives you a unit and all this kind of stuff.
Like Dragon Ball Heroes is the big one that probably our listeners would know.
Exactly. And I know Gundam has had multiple of these. It's got a current one that's ongoing. It's just a big genre in Japan where arcades still are hanging on, are still a thing, but were a huge thing in 2007 when Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle was a hit. And obviously the idea of Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, as implied by the name, is that it is the monsters. So you get different collectible cards of the different classic monsters in Ultraman. And so they made a series kind of based loosely on that game, which was a streaming series on a pay-per-view streaming platform. Again, this is 2007, so this is like the early days of we're doing like original content on the internet, basically. Although I think you could stream it to your TV through different networks like cable and stuff like that. The basic premise of the series is it is set, I think it's meant to be set in the broad continuity of Ultraman Mebius, but in the far-flung future where humanity is out exploring like Star Trek style space in the frontier space, and you've got a ship of people who end up on a planet where they're investigating the mysterious disappearance of all these people living on this planet, and they discover that the planet is being attacked by monsters that were the same kinds of monsters and aliens and stuff that used to attack Earth in the distant history when Ultraman was always hanging around on Earth fighting monsters and shit. And in the intervening years post Ultraman Mebius, Earth has had peace. They haven't seen any monsters. They're like, why the fuck are these crazy monsters here? And they also discover a mysterious man with amnesia. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The main character is an amnesiac with a mysterious power. And his power is he's got a little toy. I mean, to them, it's not a toy. To the audience member, it's like, oh, that's the toy that you could buy at the store. And you swipe a card in the toy, and it summons a big monster. And it's basically like Pokemon but Godzilla, where you summon a giant monster. You're like, go get him, Thunderbolt, King.
Pokemon but Godzilla sounds fucking rad. Yeah. I love that idea.
And honestly, the show kind of kicks ass. It kind of rules. It's very fun. It basically has its kind of 26 episodes across 2 seasons. You've got Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, and then you have the second season, Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, Never Ending Odyssey, which might be one of the longest titles I've ever seen for a TV show, because it's just crazy. It's a fucking blast. So because you just get like the first season is all set on this one planet where they're investigating like why are these monsters appearing, and then what is the history of this mysterious man Ray who can control and summon these monsters but has no memory of himself, and you eventually learn that he is a member of or he is a descendant of a like ancient powerful entity called the Ray Blood, And the Ray blood is like from the ancient past of this world, where like the father of Ultra and the Ultraman King were fighting this dude in the ancient history. But he was like sealed away or something like that. But he has all these descendants, but across all these different alien species. And Ray happens to be a human who has inherited the traits of the Ray blood, and the Ray blood have the ability to control monsters and stuff like that. So that's the first season, is kind of him learning that about himself. And then the second season is like almost like a pseudo tournament arc where they end up on yet a different planet. So they thought that they got away and that all the shit was over, and then it's like, uh-oh, we're on now another planet that has a bunch of monsters on it, but it also has a bunch of other Ray bloods that are different aliens that have inherited that ability, and so he has to fight all these other people on this planet to become the best Ray blood, but he wants to, like, the idea is that the whoever wins inherits all of the power, and he becomes like the evil emperor of the universe. Of course, Ray is like, no, I want to win, and so I can put a stop to this and destroy the ancient spirit of this creature that is trying to make us fight to take over the universe again. And it's not like it's the best Ultraman show ever. It is and this is true of a lot of the stuff they're making around this time. It is a fairly cheap looking show. This is where they've got like, man, green screens are a thing. And then boy, it's like we're doing green screens, not so much shooting on a quarry. Every once in a while they do a quarry, and it's very heartwarming. It's like, oh, they're like an actual quarry, or like out in a field somewhere in their costumes and shit, and not just standing on a green screen. But there's just a vibe to the show that's very enjoyable, and it's mostly, even more so than almost any other Ultraman show before this, an excuse to just see fights. The plots are very thin, the character arcs are super basic and very anime coded, as you can probably tell by the premise of the show. But it's all about like, okay, let's get Gomora, who's a big kind of Godzilla looking guy, who's sort of the Pikachu of the show, I guess, in the Pokemon comparison, fighting a bunch of other monsters. And there is something very fun about, now that they're in this period of bringing back classic monsters, that you see them again and again, that there's like oh yes, here's Ella King, or here's Red King, who's my favorite. I love Red King. He's fucking awesome. He's not red. I don't know why his name is Red King, but he's just one of the great classic Ultraman monsters, because he's a dumb piece of shit. He's got a little tiny head and a little tiny brain in that head, and Red King's an idiot, and it's great. And there's just something very fun about getting to see all the monsters and these crazy matchups and all these big moves. And it's like so much more just straight up big monster professional wrestling, which is what people say Ultraman is. But usually Ultraman has like a sci-fi plot that justifies all of it. This is just like, nah, we just want to see the guys in the big costumes throw each other around and have the fun time. And it's very fun. They then didn't stop there, though, because they then made a movie called Mega Monster Battle: Ultra Galaxy Legend, the movie. In case you didn't know if it was a movie or not, they tell you. And this movie fucking kicks ass, because this movie is nominally, it's an Ultra Galaxy monster whatever battle movie. It does have the cast of that show in there, but really it is about bringing back all the Ultraman stuff, because Ultraman and Ultra 7 have like cameos in that show, but they're not characters. It's not about Ultraman showing up. But Mega Monster Battle Ultra Galaxy Legend, the movie, that is where you have an evil Ultraman Belial, who is an Ultraman who is like the Ray blood of Ultramans. He's got like the Ray blood shit, but he's an Ultraman, which makes him, very dangerous and powerful. He was sealed away in the ancient history of the Ultraman universe, and he has escaped because of a side character from the TV show unseals him, and then promptly gets destroyed immediately because he's unsealed the great ancient evil. And so Belial then goes and invades the Land of Light. He fucks up all the Ultramans, like all of them, like every Ultraman ever is in this show. Even like they did like practical versions of the Ultraman from like the 1981 anime they made. Like that's just every random Ultraman is in this. And it's kind of rules, and you just get to see them all get their asses kicked. And then it all becomes about them. The characters from the Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, it's about them kind of teaming up with, I think it's Ultraman, it's Ultra 7. But the big thing about this movie is they introduce a brand new Ultraman that it's a character I've known has existed for a long time, because he's like the most popular Ultraman of the modern era, and that's Ultraman Zero, who you learn is Ultra 7's son. And he's a important character because he's the first Ultraman who has like character traits. You know, all the Ultramans are basically the same character, which with a different name and costume. It's just a big magical guy who fights for justice and friendship and you know, the American way or the Japanese way, I guess. And that's it. You know, it's like the generic Superman / Captain America character. Ultraman Zero is a little shit. He's a cocky little motherfucker who thinks he's the best guy around. And he kind of is. You know, he is this incredibly powerful Ultraman, but he's too powerful for his own good. And so he is off being trained on a separate planet by Ultraman Leo, which is fucking sick because if you've seen all these shows, Ultraman Leo in his original TV show was the martial arts guy who he was trained by Ultra 7 after Ultra 7 got his leg broken by a monster, so he couldn't fight anymore. So he has to train this new young buck, Ultraman Leo, to be the best fighter and to, you know, protect the Earth. And then now in this movie that is made, it's got to be like 30 years after Ultraman Leo. Now it's Ultraman Leo training up Ultra 7's son, Ultraman Zero, on a planet where he's got like this crazy armor on that suppresses his power so he can train to be more powerful. So he can ultimately fight like basically Ultraman Satan, which is what Ultraman Belial is. And it's sick. Like it's big, dumb action movie plot. And it must be like 90% of the movie's runtime is you are just looking at Ultramans. The human characters are a tiny footnote in the overall movie, but it fucking rules. Like, I'm way into it. Ultraman Zero is voiced by Miyano Mamoru, who you would know as, you know, one of the great Japanese voice actors, Death Note, Gundam 00, you know, stuff like that. And it is a great performance for a cocky-ass motherfucker. And you get to see Ultraman Zero save the day. And then you just get from there a series of different like shorts and stuff featuring Ultraman Zero. You get a sequel movie called Ultraman Zero, The Revenge of Belial, or its full title in Japanese, Ultraman Zero the Movie, Super Decisive Battle, Belial Galactic Empire. This is a great title for a film where he goes to a parallel universe to fight Belial again. You get a movie called Ultraman Saga, where he teams up with Ultraman Cosmos and Ultraman Dyna. There's one where he fights an evil clone of himself called Darklops Zero. So they just make these no like regular Ultraman TV shows. It's just all these weird shorts and movies and stuff like that, but all featuring this character Ultraman Zero, which I was very curious about because I had heard about this character forever, but partially from like the Miyano Mamoru thing. And because I had seen on his like, you know, resume, like, oh, he's this Ultraman Zero guy who's in all these different shows and stuff. But I was always like, what is the Ultraman Zero show? Because it's like, you know, you've got Ultraman Tiga, you've got Ultraman Dyna, that's where Ultraman Dyna's from. Where's Ultraman Zero from? And it's really fascinating to me that the most popular modern day Ultraman is not from his own show. He is from all these like disparate movies and stuff like that. And from what I understand, he is going to cross over in countless Ultraman series in the future because he's wildly popular. But it's pretty interesting kind of seeing this era of Ultraman where they haven't gotten back into the TV show stuff. They will eventually. I'm kind of watching the first show that kind of eases its toe back into the world of like a regular Ultraman TV show again. But it's this strange period where they're just trying all this different stuff, and it really moves it into this totally different era of the brand, where it's big epic Ultraman. You've got all the Ultramans together. You know, the human characters here are really de-incentivized. You've got just the directorial style, particularly for that first Ultraman Zero movie, which is directed by a guy, Sakamoto Koichi, who also does a lot of Super Sentai stuff and Kamen Rider stuff. And so you get a little bit more kind of hand-to-hand striking and a little bit less of the kind of professional wrestling grapple kind of combat stuff. And so it's a pretty interesting period, but it is definitely a blast. You know, it's very much for Ultraman fans. I think it would be very confusing if you tried to watch this like any of these movies without knowing what this series was. And I'm sure if you were living in Japan, it would be fine because you'd have the cultural osmosis to be able to get the gist of it. But I think if you're someone who's a relative newcomer to Ultraman, this would be like the most alienating Ultraman shit you could possibly watch. But for someone who's been doing this Ultraman journey for like 7 years or whatever at this point, there is something pretty awesome about getting like Ultraman Leo's training up Ultra 7's son. Like, that's a cool plot line, and they execute it really well. There's lots of cool stuff like that.
I looked up Ultraman Zero while you were talking. He has one of the longest English language Wikipedia pages of like a Japanese character I've ever seen. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So he is indeed very popular. Did you watch? I was just looking through the list. Did you get to Ultra 7X, the 2007 thing?
No, so that has not been released over here.
Okay.
And so I did find a version of it online, but I watch all this stuff with my dad, and so I didn't want to
Yeah.
bother with the like putting that on Plex or something like that and all that.
Okay.
So I've just been watching through the stuff that I can
This
buy.
is stuff you get on DVD, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Although we are now back. We are back in the era of Blu-ray. They're not great looking Blu-rays because it's again like 2007, 2008. But it's like, man, some of those shows on DVD were pretty hard to deal with the visual quality of it. But yes, I do really want to watch Ultra 7X, but I'll have to find some time to get to that one.
It was funny because I was wondering where that even like aired, because I saw that one of its releases was on Verizon's Go 90 app, which I remembered was a short-lived. It lasted 3 years as an online streaming service when Verizon tried to be a streamer in that era where everyone was trying to be a streamer.
Yeah, and that's really the vibe that this whole era of Ultraman has. It's just sort of extending its tendrils in all this kind of like unconventional kind of media formats. And before it will eventually come back to TV. Because I'm currently watching Ultraman Ginga, which I believe was still a streaming show. And it is like the cheapest fucking TV show I have ever seen. The first season of Ultraman Ginga, I swear it is like they got 7 people and a camera guy in a car, and they drove up to an abandoned school for a weekend, and they shot the whole show there. It's like so cheap. It's like we could have filmed this show. It's so cheap looking. But I know that like post Ultraman Ginga, we start getting to proper Ultraman shows again. But it's just a really... It's a really fascinating period of this franchise, and one I've been super curious about for so long. Because when you look up the Ultraman stuff, there's just this chunk of time from like 2008 to 2012, 13 that's just so confusing, because trying to figure out what to watch next is like its own journey to be like, okay, well, it's okay, this show is here, but then they made this movie, but then there were these like 2 spin-offs, and I'm very excited to get back to like, we're just doing a regular ass TV show. Unfortunately, they're gonna stop doing 50 episode ones. Ultraman Mebius was the last 50 episode one. They go to 2 cores because that's just how it all went. But I'm excited to get back to normal Ultraman very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't I talk about old stuff I've been watching, and then we can move into video games and stuff, Sean, because I'm still on my 007 bullshit since I played First Light earlier this year. I think I talked about this on the last monthly stuff episode of Purely Academic, where I had started watching through all the James Bond movies, and I've still been going. I've slowed down a little bit over the last month or two just because I've had other stuff going on, but I have gotten up through The Living Daylights, which is the first Timothy Dalton movie and the penultimate movie of the 1980s and of the Cold War, because then License to Kill is the last one of either of those, and James Bond goes on ice for a little bit as they figure out what to do, because there's also some legal issues. But yeah, it's been very fun. I'm still enjoying this. James Bond is the kind of thing where even when the movies are bad, I kind of have fun watching through them. And I've also now gotten to the point where I have now filled in the couple of gaps I had, where I had seen, before I started this, I'd seen most James Bond movies, but there were a couple I hadn't. There was one Connery, his last one, Diamonds Are Forever, and then I had not seen a couple of the last Roger Moore. So I've now seen every James Bond movie. As I'm going, I am ranking these, and I'll, hopefully unveil that when I'm done with all of them at the end of this project. But it's been fun. I've been enjoying going through these. It's such a weird series because it's also just a journey through film history. You start in the 1960s, and then you keep going and going up to the 1980s, and you see all the different trends they wind up chasing. You start seeing actors that you recognize, like A View to a Kill, which is Roger Moore's last movie, not one of the better James Bond movies, does have Christopher Walken in it as the big bad. And like, it is so fun to see him pop up as and he's doing a full Christopher Walken performance. There's a scene in that movie where I swear to God, it looks like what happens is that he's like giving a speech to his subordinates, and he like is going and going, and then he's like points like he's about to shout, and he stops for about 5 seconds, and the camera just holds, and they don't cut, and then he keeps going, and it feels like he forgot his line, and he just turned it into part of the performance, and it is a full-on Chris Walken performance, and it makes that movie very fun. The big other one that I watched that I had never seen before that was a revelation to me because it's very bad is Never Say Never Again, which is the unofficial James Bond movie. So all the James Bond movies from 1963 to the last Daniel Craig movie were made by Eon Productions, owned by the Broccoli family. That's their name. They're not literally a family made of broccoli. That sounds like a children's show on Disney, the Broccoli family. But anyway, and all the James Bond movies were made by that one, set of producers until Amazon now owns it because Jeff Bezos is a real James Bond villain. But in the middle, you did have this crazy contract issue that wound up in one unofficial James Bond movie that brought back Sean Connery in the 1980s amidst the Roger Moore era, and that is Never Say Never Again. And if you've never heard of this, there's good reason for that. This movie is very obscure. The whole reason that this happened is, it's hard to explain, but basically the movie Thunderball, which is the fourth Sean Connery movie, that is based on a novel that Ian Fleming wrote, obviously, but that novel was originally actually a script. Before James Bond was ever on film, Ian Fleming had lots of offers to try to figure out how to do this on film, and his first crack at that, this would have been in the 50s, was he worked with a guy named Kevin McClory to write a script for an original James Bond movie based on his character. That script was called Thunderball. It did not get made into a movie, and everything was on ice, so Ian Fleming took that script, turned it into a book, and it became one of the books in the series called Thunderball. Then when Eon Productions gets the license to make James Bond movies, Thunderball is one of the big sticking points because Kevin McClory is suing Ian Fleming for credit on that book. And what it winds up in is they are able to make Thunderball the movie with Kevin McClory as a co-producer, and Kevin McClory would give them the rights, but Kevin McClory retained the rights to that book for film adaptations. This would never happen today. I don't think the law would allow something this convoluted to happen with intellectual property today, but basically Kevin McClory retained the rights. He could make as many movies based on that one James Bond novel as he wanted. Initially, though, he had to wait 10 years after Thunderball, then he could go at it. So Thunderball is 1965, he waits a while, and then in the late 70s starts developing his own James Bond movie at a different, competing studio based again on Thunderball. So it's going to be a remake of Thunderball. They wind up hiring Sean Connery, who in the mid-1980s, I guess, needed the money. They gave him just backed up a dump truck full of cash. And I think based on seeing the movie, I think most of the budget went straight in Sean Connery's pocket because it sure as shit ain't on screen. And they made a new version of Thunderball, and it is the worst James Bond movie. I am very confident saying that. That movie came out the same year as Octopussy, the second to last Roger Moore movie. And Octopussy is a bad James Bond movie. It is a better James Bond movie than Never Say Never Again. Never Say Never Again is the cheapest fucking garbage. It is, if you like James Bond movies for their great production values and their cool action scenes and their stunts and all of that stuff and their cool location work, which is the stuff you get even in the bad James Bond movies, you still get all of that stuff, and that's why you stick around. Never Say Never Again has none of that. The only thing it has going for it is that Sean Connery is back, but I have to tell you, I know we all love Sean Connery as James Bond. Sean Connery did not care about James Bond in 1983, and it is very obvious. He had moved on over 10 years ago from this character. He comes back. It is the most bored, phoned in, I do not want to be here performance I think I've ever seen from a movie star. It is honestly, if you like Sean Connery as James Bond, it is depressing to watch how much he is just checked the fuck out of this thing. And so otherwise you just get a bad 80s version of Thunderball that does very, very little to distinguish itself. And there's a reason why that movie is not widely available today, and it is because it is bad, and it is a weird curio of history. Kevin McClory went on to, he lived until the mid-aughts, and he tried to make a third Thunderball movie several times. He tried to do this again in the 90s. He tried to rope Timothy Dalton in to make a competing third Thunderball that would run against the Pierce Brosnan movies. He never got to do that, and then eventually he died, and his family sold the rights back to the Broccolis, and that is how we got the worst Daniel Craig movie, Spectre, because Spectre originated in Thunderball, so that is why Blofeld and Spectre are not in any of the post On Her Majesty's Secret Service Bond movies because of all this contract wrangling. And anyway, yeah, so what a fucking time for Hollywood. Can you imagine if there were 4 Thunderball movies, just the same book over and over, just from this one crazy producer trying to make a James Bond series off of one book?
I mean, I love it because I was waiting for an opportunity to make a joke of like, well, I mean, clearly what he needed to do is to just keep on making Thunderball, but with every subsequent James Bond actor. But then that is literally what he tried to do.
He did, yes.
That's fucking crazy. Like, I kind of knew a little bit of that story, but I didn't know that much about it. So that's fucking insane.
Yeah. And that movie is, it honestly, if you just look on paper, it looks like it could be pretty good, because that movie, they got Irvin Kershner to direct. He did The Empire Strikes Back, and this was the first thing he did after Empire. It's Douglas Slocum is the director of photography. This is the first movie he did after Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's a lot of, and actually a lot of the crew is from Raiders, because that crew made that movie in 81 and then basically rolled off of that, and a lot of them were hired on to Never Say Never Again. But God, it is just the cheapest shit. The action is so bad. Especially, I will say, the 80s for James Bond is generally considered kind of a low period for the character, and I understand that. But the guy who directed all the Bond movies in the 80s is John Glenn, who had been the editor on the series throughout the 70s. And John Glenn's movies are kind of up and down, but I will say he is really, really good at getting good-looking location work and doing cool action scenes with good practical stunt work. Like, I think John Glenn's movies are a very clear influence on Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible movies when you look at how they kind of sell these, like, big marquee stunts. The difference being that none of the James Bond actors do those stunts. Tom Cruise is obviously uniquely crazy, and Roger Moore was not jumping out of planes and stuff, but he had other people jumping out of planes for him, and they would cut it together on a green screen and whatnot. And all of that stuff, like, John Glenn is very good at that in the 1980s, and I will defend his movies for that specifically. And so then you watch Never Say Never Again, where the big marquee action sequence in that movie is Bond having an endless fist fight in a med spa with another guy that ends with James Bond throwing a vial of his own urine in the villain's face, and they hold on it for like 10 seconds to like make sure you get the gag, and it is so bad, and Sean Connery looks so embarrassed to be there. It is an awful movie.
Great. You know,
yeah.
You know, I know what I want to watch now, and it's not that.
Yeah, it's not that. I did watch The Living Daylights last night. That's the first Timothy Dalton movie. Timothy Dalton is such a fucking phenomenal James Bond. Neither of his movies are like the best James Bond movie. They're both very good, though, I think. License to Kill is an insane movie, but I do like it because it is insane. I really do think Timothy Dalton, he might be the best Bond actor. I've actually heard Christopher Nolan, who is obviously a big James Bond fan, he's talked about that he thinks Dalton was the best Bond, even if he wasn't in the best Bond movies. And I think he might be onto something there. Timothy Dalton is so uniquely compelling as that character, especially coming off of the Roger Moore era, where I like Roger Moore and I will defend Roger Moore, but he is kind of an acquired taste. You have to be willing to watch more silly, campy James Bond, and I know some people just don't want that, and that's fine. It is like half the series, so you know, get over it or just don't watch them. But like, it is funny going from Moore to Timothy Dalton, because Dalton could not be more different. He plays James Bond as a functional sociopath, basically. Like, he plays him as someone where you are constantly watching the calculation behind his eyes. He feels genuinely dangerous. He plays Bond like a couple degrees off from being a villain in one of these movies, which I think makes him really fascinating. And I remember, Sean, when we talked about 007 First Light, you talked about that moment late in the game where Bond is with, like, I forget what her name was, but the major Bond girl of that game, and they're on a boat together, and and she's betrayed him like 6 times at this point. Yeah. And and you said part of what makes that scene so electric is you're unsure if Bond is going to sleep with this woman or murder this woman. And that is every single interaction Timothy Dalton has with another human being in these movies, is he's either going to, like, if it's a woman, sleep with her, or if it's a man, you know, charm this guy, or he's going to kill them. And like, those are the two options, and it just makes for the most exciting performance. And if people, it's the era of Bond that probably people know the least, because it's just these 2 movies from the late 80s. They weren't the most successful James Bond movies. They came back in the 90s, and then Pierce Brosnan, his movies were very successful. Daniel Craig's movies were very successful, but he is definitely the proto-Daniel Craig in that way. But I also think even over Daniel Craig, there's a level of like darkness and unpredictability to what he does in the part that nobody else comes close to, and it makes his movies absolute must-watches.
Yeah, they're definitely the ones, other than the Sean Connery ones, I'm most interested in is checking out the Timothy Dalton movies.
Yeah. And if you like, and then if you want to see him go completely unhinged, License to Kill is the one where Felix Leiter gets eaten by sharks, and so James Bond goes completely off the fucking rails and spends 2 hours murdering people, and it's great. It's the one that's basically James Bond if it was Miami Vice, and it goes whole hog with that. It's the one that ends with him dousing a dude in gasoline and lighting him on fire. I just love it. It's an insane movie. It's not necessarily a good James Bond movie, but it's an insane movie, and I like insane movies, so there you go.
It sounds pretty good. That's a pretty compelling argument you just made for it.
Indeed. So, yeah, I'm excited to round into the 90s here and see some of those Pierce Brosnan movies again and whatnot, because it's also an interesting era. So that's what I've been doing with movies and stuff. Sean, you want to talk about some video games?
Yeah, let's talk about some video games. Let's talk about the video game of all video games. A little video game I've been playing for a couple of years now, on and off, just here and there. I know I've mentioned it on the podcast. Just that old Genshin Impact. That old gym, it's still going strong. It's going real strong because we just got, just like 5 days before recording this, the 7.0 update for Genshin Impact, which is a momentous one because it is the update that brings the Traveler and Paimon to Snezhnaya, which is the very Russia based nation that is the seventh of the nations sort of outlined in the original kind of plan of Genshin Impact way back before the game came out, where they released that trailer that was like all the different chapters of the game leading to Snezhnaya. Last year they sort of snuck an extra chapter in there, which is Nodcry, which is this kind of borderland between the kind of other nations of Teyvat and Snezhnaya, and Nodcry was awesome. Like, I think last year was a great year for Genshin Impact. And so they just dropped 7.0, and it fucking rules. Like, it is so good. I have only sort of done really a small portion of what's in the update. The update feels really sizable, probably not quite as big as what I think would be 3.0, which was Sumeru, which I think is still the biggest update that game has ever had. That's when they added the Dendro element. Just the area of Sumeru is fucking massive. There's a huge amount of stuff in that. Snezhnaya is probably not quite that big at this point, but it's still got a lot of stuff. The main thing I've done is I have finished the 2 kind of main story chapters. I ended up staying up about 2 hours later than I was planning to last night because I just got so sucked into the story, and I finished all that. And I've done just a little bit of exploring, but it is a really awesome kind of period for the game where there are lots and lots of different narrative elements that they have been building up to throughout the 6-something year run of the game up to this point. And now there's just this sense of payoff and the stakes getting much, much bigger. Where if you're someone who hasn't played Genshin Impact or hasn't played it in a while, the gist of what is going on with the story is that Snezhnaya is the kind of Russia-based nation that was set up near the beginning of the game as a pseudo-antagonist force, where you had the Tsarista, the goddess of ice that rules that country, has sent out these elite agents called the Fadui, or the Fadui is like the whole organization. The elite agents are the Harbingers, where she has these 11 Harbingers that are going to every nation, and they are trying to get these things called the Gnosis, or the Hearts of the Gods, which are these sort of magical artifacts that the individual gods of the other 6 nations have that give them authority over the elements that they preside over: wind, fire, water, so on and so forth. And in most of the narrative chapters in the game, as the Traveler is going across all these other nations, you end up running across one of these Harbingers. For the first few chapters, they are on the antagonist side. You're kind of fighting against them, and they got the kind of god heart at the end of that story, despite your best efforts. But then around the Fontaine arc, where you go to Fontaine, which is a sort of pseudo-France nation, you meet a character called Arlecchino, who is one of the Fadui Harbingers, but complicates things tremendously because she is definitively not a bad person. She is actually a very moral person, a very complicated person, but one that you ultimately are on the same side of. And that story kind of gives a big twist of the sense of, okay, these people, Snezhnaya, this nation, these agents, they are not inherently evil. They are these very powerful people that are all operating towards some sort of mysterious goal. You don't know exactly why they're assembling these magical artifacts. But they all also have their kind of own agendas and their own personalities. Some of them can be very evil, but some of them can be very good. And from that point, most of the ones you meet are in this kind of gray area, and you end up in this kind of like sort of complicated position of where you have really ingratiated yourself and become good allies with certain members of this group, but you have sort of deadly opposed some of the others. And so coming into Snezhnaya, it's a really interesting scenario where the traveler's relationship to this cold nation is really complicated. He is both a great ally to them and a great enemy. And he's been on kind of both sides of this conflict. And you have all these different characters that you have been kind of teamed up with sometimes and fought against in other scenarios. And it just has created this really rich narrative mixture to kind of come into this new nation with. And I think one of the best things about it, as is always one of the best things in any Genshin Impact story as you enter a new nation, is kind of learning about what is this region like? What is this country like? What are the problems it faces? What are the people who live here like? And the story in Snezhnaya, at least for this initial update, where you have these kind of two big story chapters that introduce you to this world, it's a really interesting one where it's almost got a little bit of like Star Wars prequel energy with the like politics of it. There's a huge scene where you go to like effectively their like Senate. I forget, there's like a Russian term for it that they use, but it's effectively like a parliament. And you just sit in on this debate where the Tsarista, the goddess of this that rules over this nation, has implemented this sort of energy conservation plan. And it's this Russia-based nation, so it's incredibly cold. They're facing this kind of eternal snowstorm, and people need energy to heat their homes. They have these like kind of like crystals or whatever that they use to heat their homes, but those are being conserved and taken up by the government because the Zarista is using them for whatever her kind of grand master scheme is. That I'm not going to reveal what it is, but you do learn about it at the end of this update. It's like right at the end of this sort of new story chapter, you get some insight into what her overall motivations are. But the point being that she is taking like this energy and has this kind of complicated economic scenario where people have to sort of, conserve this energy. They only get a very small portion of it to kind of try to get through this intense winter. And you are exposed to the complicated politics of that. You have all these different factions that are debating for who needs this energy and why. And a lot of it is tied to different characters you've met at different points. A big one being Tartaglia, who goes all the way back to Genshin Impact 1.0, where you met him in Liyue. Great character who's been around kind of forever. And he has ended up as kind of the leader of the that's representing the troops. And so he's got like this, like, well, there has been this historical policy in Snezhnaya that veterans are prioritized for healthcare and stuff like this. And it's like, and so we need to allocate more to families of veterans. And it really gets into the weeds of the politics. And I can see that for some people that might end up getting a little bit dry. But personally, I've thought it was really fascinating. And the way that the Traveler is sort of this, kind of neutral person in the middle of all this, a person who has tremendous power at this point and influence in the story, and trying to figure out like kind of where do you throw your weight behind? How, like, where do you try to put pressure in order to try to start to unravel what's going on here? Because the Traveler wants to come to understand what is this grand plan that the Zerista is trying to implement that he is constantly running into throughout his journeys. It clearly ties into something very fundamental to the nature of the world. And he's at a kind of a loss of who does he support. There's these kind of factions that are against the government, but what the government's doing with this plan is not necessarily evil. So it's not just like I got to join the rebels, but also I can't just like support it outright, because there are a lot of impoverished people that are, potentially freezing to death in their homes because they are not able to heat it. And the way the story, I think, navigates those problems as you meet these different characters, see their interests, and the Traveler kind of trying to figure out what path to walk. I think it's just a really, really fascinating story. One of the other things with it is that you have, of course, Paimon, who is your companion character who's been with you the whole story for the whole game. Just a great character. One of the primary reasons why I would strongly urge people to play Genshin Impact with the Japanese voice acting is because English Paimon is very difficult to stomach. Japanese Paimon is awesome, voiced by Koga Aoi. Incredible performance. But as soon as you enter Snezhnaya, Paimon gets ill, basically. Like, she is experiencing these sort of, like, she gets very kind of like foggy-headed. She finds it difficult to kind of focus on things. and you don't really understand why. And so for most of that story, Paimon is basically, recovering in this room, in this hotel room, and the traveler's going around alone investigating these things, which is another thing that really changes the whole tone of it. That everything suddenly gets a lot weightier, a lot more intense with this, like your comic relief person is not with you on this journey, and the traveler has to kind of navigate all of this on his own. And you do start to come to understand more about the nature of exactly what Paimon is, which has always been a kind of a little bit of a sticking point of who is this weird fairy person who can fly around and you've never seen anybody in this whole world that looks like her. And you start to learn a little bit more about like her nature as a being, because that ties into why she is feeling ill. So it's like there are multiple of these kind of avenues of big overarching questions that have kind of hanged across the story of Genshin Impact that do speak to kind of very fundamental elements of the story that are starting to get put more directly into play now, which is pretty interesting. And then the last thing to say about this update with Snezhnaya is just like kind of the gameplay and the aesthetics and stuff. It's gorgeous. Like the region looks so beautiful. The music is incredible. The idea of Snezhnaya is it's a vaguely sort of early 1900s Russia in terms of the general aesthetic, and Snezhnograd, which is the major kind of capital city, just is so beautiful, and obviously kind of pulling from like Moscow aesthetically, but I think they just do a great job of capturing the look of like Russian architecture and stuff like that, but putting a little bit of a Genshin Impact spin on it. And then there's just a lot of like interesting weird gameplay elements that they've introduced. There's like a whole sort of Death Stranding inspired system where you can create ice constructs like ramps and stuff like that you use to solve puzzles, but they exist, they kind of can be shared dynamically across the open world. So like in Death Stranding, where you would like come across a zipline thing that someone built in their world, but it's sort of shared dynamically in yours. They've kind of taken that mechanic and put it in Genshin, which is really interesting. There's a whole like third person shooter cover kind of thing where you end up in this dimension that they called the Shadow Realm. No relationship to the English dub of Yu-Gi-Oh, a totally different Shadow Realm. But you are in the Shadow Realm, and the only way to sort of fight these beings in this weird dimension is by using this kind of magical gun-like thing. And so they kind of built a whole third-person shooter inside of Genshin Impact for these special levels. It's just fucking crazy. And at this point, it kind of feels like they've made every video game that's ever existed within Genshin Impact itself. But I've just been having a blast. I think it is just a really, really phenomenal start, a very exciting start to a very pivotal year in the history of this game. And it makes me very curious what's going to happen, because there's a lot of really huge shit that happens in the story in this update, in terms of just like, setting up huge status quo shifting crazy bullshit that feels like is getting ready to go down. And it makes me very curious, what is Genshin Impact going to look like in the future? Because obviously there's no way they just stop it here. Oh, we got the Snezhnaya, we did whatever, and then the story's over. This game makes insane amounts of money. I believe the last thing I saw was that it has once again become the highest grossing like monthly gacha game on the market. So Genshin Impact has kind of taken that crown again. So I'm curious where they go in the future. But for right now, Snezhnaya it's living up to the hype. It's living up to kind of like what it's delivering on some of the things that I was hoping it would do, of getting into some of the kind of nitty gritty of some of these more fundamental questions about the world, that it felt like we were primed to deliver on. But it's also doing lots of things that are interesting and surprising. Like I was not expecting the intricacies of the politics of this community that you'd get involved in. And then there's this one part of the story chapter, it revolves around kind of like a murder mystery in a like locked room where you go to a opera, and then this blizzard hits, and you have like 8 or 9 people trapped in this opera, and you can't leave because of this insane blizzard. And then when you go to sleep and you wake up the next morning, 2 of them have been killed off. And so you have to solve this problem. That ties into a much bigger thing. But it sort of hits on this cool murder mystery story. There's just a lot going on. So Genshin Impact, it's fucking awesome. I've obviously been playing it every day forever at this point. It has continued to be really good, but this is a particularly exciting time for the game.
That's awesome. I'm looking at the Genshin Impact wiki page for the Snezhnaya update, and the most exciting thing I saw is that there is a new enemy in the wild, or a type of wildlife called a polar bear, which is like a big Russian polar bear, and it's like got brown fur, brown and white fur, and it looks absolutely adorable. And I like the polar bear. This is making me want to play Genshin again.
Yes, there are, because there's all these fae that exist in Snezhnaya. So you have all these kind of like big creatures, and there's like, like, because there are literal big bears, and then they're kind of like bear human guys. There are these like fairies that have, like, kind of like classical fairies, but you've got these weird rabbit motherfuckers that wear cloaks that are really cool. There is one of the new characters, is what I think you'd really like, Jonathan, he's named Aloysia. He's a hunter. He's got straight up like just like a fucking bolt action light rifle. I think it's basically supposed to be like a Mosin Nagant rifle.
Well, that sounds awesome.
But the big thing with him is he's got a dog. He's got like a husky. And it is the animations on that dog. I can't remember what the dog's name is, but they're just so good. He has his like, because one of his sort of kind of waiting idle animations is just the dog coming up, and he feeds it a little treat, and then the dog like runs around in a circle, and then the dog like gets up on its hind legs and puts its front legs up on his chest because he's trying to get at the other treat that's in his hand, and he's like, whoa, 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 because it's this big ass husky, and it's just like the intricacies of the animation that they did on that are it's like, it's so good. You can like feel the, if you've ever had like a big dog do that to you, you can feel the weight of it like up on your chest. And then one of the other main characters, Odette, is a ballerina who also uses a sword, and the animations on that character are gorgeous. Like, they're so good. Like, they've really, they have not sat on their laurels in terms of the production value of the game. Like, if you compare the animations and the detail of the character models in this update to like 1.0 Genshin Impact, it feels like this is like we're on Genshin Impact 3 or 4 in terms of technical generations, because it's just so much more advanced. It's like that stuff in the game is very impressive. And Aloysia is just, he's one of the best. Like, he's just such a cool character. He's this really kind of, he's a very Russian feeling character, that he has this very kind of deadpan, slightly cynical outlook on the world, but he also loves his dog. And there's just like a quality to him that I fucking adore.
Okay. I'm looking at this. This is so cool. And now I'm thinking, do I need to get back? He's a 4-star. I could definitely get him.
You get him for free. You just get him. He early on in the Snezhnaya story, they just give you an Aloysia for free, and he's also very effective in game.
Okay, man, this looks good, because I'm also like I'm far behind on Genshin. I dropped off near the end of Sumeru, but I don't know. Maybe I need to go in and just catch up, because this looks very cool. And I did not drop off of Genshin because anything like I didn't like it or anything like that. It was just taking up a lot of my life. But man, this looks cool. I am loving the look of Aloysia. Have they ever added Dansleif, the Kenjiro Tsuda character? I know he's supposed to be playable one day. Do we think that's coming?
No, he is. I mean, he has shown up always at the end of. So you have like the end of that like nation story, and then they do like an intermission chapter, and he kind of always shows up in there. Although he does have a big role in Not Cry, because that involves some stuff of like his history, but he has not been added as a playable character yet. That feels like a post Snezhnaya, the wild frontier of Genshin Impact. There are a few characters like that. Like Alice, Clay's mother, who we have now seen, but she's not been added as a playable character yet. But there are some of those like really big characters that I'm curious to see. Of course, he has to end up as a playable character at some point. He's so popular. But I don't know exactly how or what form that will ever occur.
Well, because they announced in 2020 on a stream that he would be playable just in the future, but it's been 6 years. So one day, I mean, it's still the future. They're not lying. But I remember loving that character and being like, when he's in, I'll definitely have to come back for Dansleif. But I don't know. Maybe I need to start catching up so I can play with Aloysia and his dog, because that dog looks awesome.
It's so good. Yeah. It's just, it gets an impact. It kicks ass.
And he's Electro, which is the best. Oh man, this is okay. Well, I could jump back in. The problem is, I'm playing everyday Street Fighter 6. Sean, my life has turned into something I never expected. I'm a fighting game guy now, I guess. I am playing Street Fighter 6 every fucking day. Last time we talked about Street Fighter 6, I said I'd played another like 50 hours on Switch. I'm up to 150 hours on Switch.
Good Lord.
I've played the absolute fuck. I've played Street Fighter 6 every day this summer. I make sure I get in at least a little bit of time. And the big development for me has been I have fully gone online. I'm playing online matches, and it is a blast. And I thought that would be kind of the barrier for me, because I always thought the barrier was I'm never going to be good enough at a fighting game to play anyone online. And one of the coolest things about Street Fighter 6 is I think they've done a lot to make that not true. For whoever you are, you can definitely go online and win some matches, or at least, and have fun with it, right? The way they do online in Street Fighter 6 is so good. This will not be news to anyone who's been playing the game forever, but just to describe it to you, Sean, and others, is the way they have their ranked system. And usually ranked sounds scary. That sounds like where it's serious. Casual is actually what is scary, because casual is where it will just match you with whoever, and you could wind up with someone who's, played at fucking Evo or something and can, like, corner you and kill you in 5 seconds, right? So you actually want to play ranked, because ranked starts you off with, for one, every character in the game is a separate ranked experience. So if you let's say Ryu is your main and you're having a lot of fun with your Ryu and you do really well with him, but you want to try out the new DLC character, you will not lose any points on your Ryu run if you go play with the new DLC character. I think this is one of the smartest things they could possibly do, because it also means that you're kind of incentivized to try different characters and just have fun taking different characters online. And what it does is when you take a character online, it does 10 placement matches. And then at the end of those, it places you into one of the ranks based on how well you did in the placement matches. And then those ranks, they start with rookie, and then it goes, I think, there's bronze, iron, silver, gold. I might be forgetting one. And then after gold, you get into like platinum, diamond, and that starts, the structure changes a little bit at that point. And then ultimately you get to master, which is where you have full like ELO style rankings, like in tournaments and stuff. But up until that point, the game is actually, it really tries to like incentivize you to stick with it, even if you're losing, because one of the things it does is that if you lose a match, you lose about 40 points on your rank, but if you win a match, you gain between about 50 and 60 points. So you get more for winning than you lose for losing, and if you go on a winning streak, which is 3 or more, you start getting bigger rewards for winning. So if you win 2 matches, you get 50 points, in your third match, you get 100 points, your fourth match, you get 150, and you can, if you get a long winning streak going, you could like go through a rank really fast. Like if you are, I presume, like a player who like is, a champion level, you could get to master it in an afternoon, because you would just go on a winning streak and beat everyone and you'd be there right away. I am not that person, but I'm having fun playing with it. And so the first character I took online was Aki, who was one of the Year 1 DLC characters. She is like your sort of poison zoner specialist character, and I really loved playing as her. And I just felt something was like intuitive clicking to me with Aki, and I had a long, arduous journey to get up to gold rank, but I did it. I wanted to get up to at least, like, I think after gold is platinum, and platinum is where they turn off the win streak bonuses and it becomes more even. And so that's kind of been my like North Star of like, I'd love to get a character at least there. I'm not yet aiming for like master rank or anything like that, but I just like to see how far I could get. Once I got to gold, I kind of hit a wall with Aki, and then also the Year 4 DLC started dropping. And so we got our big new character, Yasmin, and Yasmin is really cool. I like her a lot. What they're doing in Year 4 for Street Fighter 6 is it's either all completely new characters who have never been in Street Fighter before, or you've got our one big guest character, which is Tifa from Street Fighter 6. She will be in Street Fighter 6. She's from Final Fantasy 7. But Yasmin is our first brand new character, and our first new character since Aki in Year 1. Year 2 and 3 were all returning characters, or guest characters. In Year 2, you had Terry and Mai from King of Fighters, Fatal Fury and stuff. And so Yasmin is our first new character. She's she's Filipino. She's in high school, and her whole story, if you play her arcade mode, is that her brother was murdered, and she's like going after his killer, and she's also just trying to become a stronger Street Fighter, kind of your generic, Street Fighter character stuff. But it's very fun. She uses a karambit knife, which is like a traditional Filipino knife, and she uses martial arts like eskrima, silat, stuff like that. She has a lot of moves whose names I absolutely cannot pronounce because I know nothing of the language of the Philippines. It is a very cool language. I just do not know how to pronounce it, so I'm not going to try. But her moves are very cool. Her moveset is cool. She's a very different character than I had like mained before, because she's much more of a kind of rushdown character of get in there and do, none of her moves are like super powerful on their own, but you string a lot of them together and then you're able to do big stuff. And I wound up really enjoying Yasmin, and because I had just paid for her with the new season pass, I was like, okay, I want to take Yasmin online. And I got much further, much quicker. Like, I placed into bronze, whereas with Aki, I had placed into rookie, so I had to climb up more. And then I had to climb up through rookie, iron, then you get to bronze, then to silver. And I got into silver pretty fast, got into gold. Gold, I've once again hit a little bit of a brick wall. Gold is very hard. I had a very rough night last night where I lost like 800 points. But I've been having a lot of fun with it, and she's a really cool character. And the biggest revelation for me is that Street Fighter, obviously it's very fun to play against the computer and do the arcade ladders, and I love the World Tour mode. World Tour is one of the greatest things humanity has ever come up with. But playing Street Fighter against other people, and again, I know this will not be a revelation to anyone who is like a long-term fighting game person, but for me, it's been really cool to learn it's a completely different game when you're playing real people. And I think the big comparison I would make is it's like chess or something, right? And chess is often used as a comparison for Street Fighter. It's like chess, but you're throwing punches instead of, moving little pieces around the board. But if you're playing chess against a computer, that can be a great way to train and try out strategies and see how you're doing. But all of the like mind game aspects of chess are not there when you're playing against a computer, because a computer will not wait to make its move. It will not have hesitation. It will learn your attacks pretty quickly. It will not have that level of unpredictability that a human being will have, right? And so one thing I've learned is that playing against the computer, or a computer, is just so different than playing against another human being that even just like when I get online and maybe I do a couple of warm-up matches against the computer just before I start playing against humans, it doesn't even really fully work as a warm-up, because all of those aspects of like, people have weird habits when they play that you can learn to punish, or they're really good at certain things that a computer just isn't gonna throw at you, or you're good at things that they haven't seen before. You'll see this especially if you're playing like a new character like Yasmin. I've definitely encountered people who are clearly very good at the game, but they don't know about certain moves I have because they haven't fought Yasmin before, and I'm able to exploit that and beat the shit out of them. And so there's just something really addictive, kind of terrifyingly addictive, against playing against other people online, where the game just comes alive in a way that you don't see in any other form. And I've absolutely loved that. And I love, sometimes it can be very frustrating when you fight someone who you feel like you should be able to beat, but then you fuck something up and you're like, God damn it, I missed that one move and I could have won, and that can be very frustrating. But it can also be very fun to just get into moments where you find someone, because the game, because of this ranked system, it's always keeping you at people who are at your rank in the game. So it's never throwing you. Sometimes you'll have people who are going up through the ranks who are clearly very good and have been playing fighting games for a long time, and they'll kick your ass. But I generally don't have blowout matches one way or the other. Generally, they are very close, very fun. You often get those. The most fun you can have in Street Fighter Online, I think, is because it gets you into, every match is 3 rounds, and then you will have 3 matches in a set, up to 3 matches. So once you've won best 2 out of 3, it moves you on to another person. But that means you can have up to 3 matches with a person. And when you have a full 3 match set where each match goes to 3 rounds and every round is like down to the last like little bit of health, those are the most fun I just think I've ever had in a video game, where you are just going back and forth and fighting for your absolute life, and both of you are like very good at certain things and you're able to like really fight to a draw. That can be so cool. And it's just been fun to have a lot of that. The 2 characters I've done a lot with online so far are Aki and Yasmin. I did briefly take Ingrid online, and I actually did really good with Ingrid. Ingrid is the crazy new character they added at the end of year 3, who she had been in some other Capcom fighting games. I believe this is her first time in a proper mainline Street Fighter. She is looks like a 12-year-old girl, but she is actually an interdimensional being who is thousands of years old, who like keeps the timeline in check. Absolutely crazy. Ingrid is nuts.
Street Fighter stuff.
Street Fighter stuff. I was playing with my brother Thomas the other day. I got him to play some with me, which he doesn't like to do because now I know the game very well, and so I just kick his ass, but it's funny. I played Ingrid against him. He's like, this is cheating. You're using magic. He was like Ryu or someone. Like, I have fucking fists. What the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, it's Street Fighter, Magic is fine. But anyway, I did well with Ingrid. I placed into silver with Ingrid, and but I didn't play a ton with her. But I did do very well when I started. So I want to go back to Ingrid because she's a really cool, very weird character who I don't even know what you would describe her as. Kind of a zoner, but she's just so weird, but really, really fun to play. And so yeah, anyway, I've been having fun with all of these characters. I'm feeling right now that I might want to like back off and play like a basic character just to get a better sense of some of the fundamentals. Like, I think I'm feeling like for my skill level, it would be good to go back to Ryu, play one of the like basic Shoto characters and just feel good about all of that stuff, because I've been attracted to all the crazy characters with like all these extra moves and stuff, and sometimes I'm feeling like I want to get better at some of these fundamentals. But like definitely my path of progress has been really fun. Of like with Aki, I learned a lot, and then I was much better when I started playing Yasmin, so I went through things faster. With Yasmin, I really focused on getting better at anti-airs, of like kicking people out of the sky when they jump, because you can really breeze through the early ranks if you just know how to punish people when they make the mistake of jumping, and that can be very fun. And also Yasmin's anti-airs are much better. She has a DP, a Dragon Punch move, which Aki does not have. Aki's anti-airs are theoretically very good, but they can be very difficult to execute because they're very precise in their direction. So anyway, I've been having a lot of fun. I've been playing the absolute shit out of Street Fighter. I cannot stop. I did basically everything in World Tour. I finished all the DLC they added, and they have discontinued new DLC for World Tour, which is too bad, because the new characters starting in Year 4 are not getting integrated into World Tour. I think everyone hopes that means that they will be doing some kind of new story stuff in the future. We're at the point where Street Fighter 6 is old enough that you would be expecting the kind of Super Street Fighter 6 update at some point. Obviously, I don't think they're going to do something quite like that, because we don't live in the era anymore where you release a brand new arcade cabinet or boxed, physical media release of the game. But something that would maybe add a new story direction would be interesting, and I think it's definitely possible, because the last thing they added in World Tour is the new Ingrid content, where Ingrid helps you go back through the timeline and stop Bosch from dying. And Bosch is going to be added into the game in DLC. And so they've kind of cleared the field a little bit for new story stuff. And I think Bosch is planned to be the end of Year 4, and I would not be surprised if they add some significant new narrative stuff there when he comes in. And maybe Bosch is even like the new kind of main character for whatever the next era is. Like, Street Fighter 6 started with Luke as kind of your main, Shoto character, and I wonder if Bosch kind of becomes that for like the next couple years of Street Fighter. It would not surprise me based on some of the stuff they do with Ingrid at the end. But yeah, I've basically played everything you could do in World Tour, and now I am just on my online bullshit, and I love this game. I cannot stop playing this game. It is on its way to becoming my most played Switch game. Holy shit, I can't stop.
Yeah, I think if you had asked me to like make a bet of what is like the video game obsession that Jonathan would fall into in 2026, playing competitive Street Fighter Online would not have been on like a bingo card. I wouldn't have fucking written it in. I'm just sitting here being like, man, yeah, oh god, you called Aki a zoner. You said, it's like, oh yeah, Yasmin has a DP. It's like, oh yeah, Ryu like a Shoto character. I'm like, what has happened to Jonathan? Like, what's going on? Like, Jesus Christ, it's like you've become a different person. It's like in high school, like fucking someone went off to summer break and they got a girlfriend or whatever, and they come back and like just a totally different. Like, what happened to you, dude? Like, what the fuck? You got a weird haircut? Like, are you wearing cologne now? Like, what's going on?
I think cosmically, getting super into Street Fighter 6 is the opposite of getting a girlfriend, but sure.
But yeah, there's just like it's. I mean, I'm totally supportive of it. I just it's so amusing to me. It's just I never would have thought it. But obviously, Street Fighter 6, we both loved it so much with the World Tour mode. And obviously it's a super fun game. I just never would have thought that you would just be like, yeah, fuck it, like let's just go full online. Let's like play Aki, the weird zoner poison girl, and just fucking get into it.
I didn't think I would either, but honestly, it speaks to this is why Street Fighter 6 is so big, right now, because it's so good and it's so inviting at onboarding you onto that stuff, and like I've also gotten deeper into the training mode and some of the stuff you can do in there, and it's like and I know the fighting game community thinks this game has basically the best training mode of all time, because you can just see anything you could possibly want, any scenario you could set up, however you want to look at frame data, which is a level of crazy I have not gotten into, but like all of that you can look at in there. And so just anything you want to kind of onboard yourself into playing, it is so welcoming in that way. And that makes it such a great experience. But Sean, let me tell you the story of the most of how I've changed playing the game, which is that I've developed a habit of when I am playing Yasmin online, Yasmin in particular, when I execute her level 3 super, and all the level 3 supers are like this, they're a very long, like, video animation that is, and it's a moment where if you pull it off, you sit back, you take your hand off the controller for a second, because nothing can touch you for that, like, 10 seconds or whatever. And what I will often do is that is the moment in a match where I have my water next to me, and I will pick up my glass, and I will take a drink of water, and then go back to fighting. And I did this while fighting Thomas the other day on the couch. We were playing, together, and I did the level 3 super on him, and then I leaned forward and drank my water. He said, "That was the douchiest thing you've ever done. Was that really necessary?" And I was like, I didn't even think of it. It was not me intentionally trying to flex on him, but it looks like I'm a fucking asshole when I do the level 3 super. He's just getting kicked, get the shit kicked out of him, and I lean forward and drink my water. It's good to stay hydrated while you're playing competitive Street Fighter, but if you're doing it with another person, you will look like an asshole.
Yeah, there's like an infamous Evo moment that's like that, where someone was just clearly like got so into the match that he won the round, but it was like a best 2 or 3 or whatever, and clearly was like so into it that he didn't realize that there was another round, and so he wins that. He gets him, he's like, yeah, and he stands up, and then the fucking round 2 starts. He's like, fuck, and he runs back to sit in the chair, and he's already been killed. It's kind of like that, only maybe less doofish. But yeah, I think the Street Fighter journey is amazing. I'm just very excited for the next purely academic you'll talk about. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I was in the training mode, you'd be like, yeah, I spent a couple hours in the lab. And I think this is a great move because it's plus on block. So I'm going to use and man, it's like when I played a lot of Ryu, I got really good at footsies. It's like I'm waiting for you to go the full fucking 9 yards with it.
I'm holding back on some of the vocab. Footsies is definitely one I'm using now because it's very basic. There are other things, like, I will be honest, I still don't quite know what plus on block means. There's some terms that I am still learning what they mean. Because there's a whole fucking language surrounding these games that you have to learn if you're playing them. But I've learned some of it. It's like I've had a summer abroad and I'm coming back with a certain level of fluency. It's very fun.
Yeah, it's like some motherfucker went to Barcelona or whatever, and he just throws weird Spanish terms into sentences he says to show off.
Well, he goes to Barcelona and then he comes back saying Barcelona. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. You have another video game to talk about, Sean.
Yes, I do. If you've been on your new Street Fighter bullshit, I don't know if I could fully call it new, but it hasn't been a full year yet. Super Robot Wars. I'm still in my Super Robot Wars bullshit. From my perspective, it feels like I've been playing Super Robot Wars games for like 10 years at this point. I think it's now about 1 full year since I started playing Super Robot Wars Y, and I'm currently playing through, and I'm almost done. If Genshin Impact had not dropped, if they had not dropped, I would have finished by now. Super Robot Wars V. Super Robot Wars V is the first PS Vita / PS4 Super Robot Wars game. It's, from what I understand, it is like the beginning of what kind of people regard as like a specific era of these games, which is VXT, and then it's Super Robot Wars 30, and then it's Super Robot Wars Y. And so I did all Super Robot Wars Y, I did all that DLC. This is how weird, crazy Super Robot Wars stuff is that in the midst of me playing Super Robot Wars V, after having done what was the most recent Super Robot Wars Y DLC, they have released yet another piece of fucking Super Robot Wars Y DLC that I think is supposed to be the last one. Because from what I understand, it doesn't really add new series to it. It's about wrapping up that story. So eventually, after I beat V, I have to get back into Y to finish the shit. Who knows if I don't know if I'll move on to X right away or play other stuff. Because I've spent like 70 hours maybe on Super Robot Wars V. These are very big games. But this one is pretty fascinating. I'm playing it in Japanese specifically. I believe you can get it on PC and just play English if you want to. But I actually really enjoy playing them in Japanese because it highlights to me how good the writing is, because they're so good at capturing characters' voices and the dialogue, and it stands out a lot more in Japanese because you can just kind of like hear it in terms of the way that's written. But this one is pretty fascinating. It is a gateway that has led me to watching a bunch of anime shit. That has also been something I've been doing basically over the summer and just have not brought them up on the podcast till now. Super Robot Wars V takes as, from a narrative perspective, the kind of most fundamental series, because all Super Robot Wars kind of pick 1 or 2 things that kind of form the base of where the story is, and then they add a bunch of series on top of that. By far, the thing that is the most fundamental base to Super Robot Wars V is Space Battleship Yamato, but specifically, it is a the remake series of Space Battleship Yamato that started coming out in the early 2010s, they're still making more of this lineage of Super Space Battleship Yamato. Like a new one just came out. Um, and it basically, this game takes the premise of Space Battleship Yamato, which people don't know. It is set in the far-flung future. Earth is well and truly fucked. Like, Earth is done because they've been attacked by these aliens called the Gamulus. Earth is like a weird little mud ball because all the oceans have dried up. Humans can only survive by living in underground cities, and humanity has 1 year left before they're all wiped out by basically radiation poisoning. And an alien sort of wreckage is found from a different alien planet called Iskandar that has plans for a super powerful engine called the Wave Motion Engine, or the Hado engine. You know, it's like the Hadoken. It's the same kanji as Ryu's iconic moves. So there's your Street Fighter crossover. They basically learned about, okay, if we go to this planet Iskander using this Hado engine, and we get back within a year, there's this thing called, I think they call it the Cosmo Cleaner or whatever, but there's this magic technology there basically that will cleanse the Earth. And so they build a brand new spaceship out of the wreckage of the historical battleship, the Yamato, which is a World War II giant battleship, and they build the big spaceship with the Hado engine, and they get a crack team of humanity to go off to the planet Skander to get the Cosmo Cleaner to come back to save the Earth. And so that's kind of the setup of this game, is it's that, but it is also set in like the distant future of the Universal Century Gundam, because you also have Crossbone Gundam exists. And so one of the other main series in this is Crossbone Gundam, the manga that is a manga-only sequel to Gundam F91. If you want more details on that, listen to Tomonothon Part 2. But so you have characters that only exist, there's no anime version of it, and so it is actually like very fun to have Tobia, the main guy from Crossbone Gundam, but you get, he's fully voiced. I mean, he's not fully voiced, but he's voiced in the combat, which is the only time that voices are for the characters. You have Kincaid now, or you might know him better as Seabook Arno, the main character F91, who becomes a dope pirate guy.
Hell yeah, he does.
Those are two of the first characters you get access to. And then eventually the story for Super Robot Wars V gets very complicated because it is a multiverse story where you end up traveling across dimensions, and then you end up in a world that is like the setting of Gundam Seed and Double O Gundam combined together, and also Cross Anja, which I talked about a little bit with the Super Robot Wars Y DLC. It has that franchise in it, and so there's like weird people with like dragons and shit there too. It's kind of crazy. And then they end up in yet a third universe that is like traditional Universal Century, like Zeta, Double Zeta, Char's Counterattack Gundam, but it's also Neon Genesis Evangelion. Like, the oceans are red because the second impact fucking happened in that universe, but also Amuro is there, which is just fucking great. And also it's like Full Metal Panic is there, which is one of the other big series that's in this one. And I believe that is also the universe where the Getter Robo characters are from. And so it ends up being this kind of like 3 different universes that all kind of come together because they are fighting. One of the main things is that a couple of these series, like Across Anja, have enemies that are in the original series kind of multiversal level opponents that can cross dimensions. And so that's kind of how they can structure the story. But anyways, it is, it's a crazy setup, but it is very fun and just wacky to see all of these characters crossover. Some of the big highlights for me for this game are the Crossbone Gundam characters being there is really cool, but also Hathaway. Hathaway's Flash is represented in here. But if you look up when this game was made, this ain't the movie Hathaway. This is the book version. And so you have like the original voice actor who played Hathaway in Char's Counterattack returns. I don't remember who plays Lane Aim, but Lane is there. But it's obviously it's not Saito Soma from the most recent movies. It is like their character designs from like if you've seen the covers of the Hathaway's Flash novels. And so Hathaway's there. He's piloting the Gundam Kishi. The Penelope and Lane Aim are there. It doesn't really do the story of Hathaway, so you don't have like Gigi or Kenneth. It's just Hathaway and Lane, and it's in a like parallel universe where Hathaway never becomes Mafty. And Tobia from the Yamato / Crossbone Gundam universe, he's like, Hathaway, no, that's fucking Mafty Nebula Evan, the infamous terrorist and all this. But in this other universe, Hathaway never becomes a terrorist. And so that's incredibly fun. If you've listened to me talk about Super Robot Wars before, you know that one of my favorite things about these games is you can just load a shit ton of MP3s onto a USB drive and just put them in the game and play music and attach them to specific characters and attacks. And so that means with Hathaway, I just loaded a bunch of Hathaway songs, and Sweet Child of Mine. And so when he does the like ultimate, like his best attack you unlock near the end of the game, I just have it play fucking Sweet Child of Mine, and it's fucking rules. And I just let the animation play every time I do it because it's so fun to watch this big crazy attack with Sweet Child of Mine playing. Crossbone Gundam was fun with the music as well because I kind of did a Frankenstein. I pulled some tracks from Gundam Age 2, which has the guy, Asano, who becomes a pirate Gundam. That's a reference to Crossbone in that. I pulled some Gundam Build Fighters tracks because there's a Crossbone Gundam song in there. And then for Kincaid, I just have the insert song that was not used in F91. And so it's kind of fun to cobble together soundtracks for those series. Some of the other stuff that's very fun is you've got Zambot 3 and Daitarn 3 are both represented here. And that's particularly fun because there's a big crossover attack. So if you use Zambot 3 and Daitarn 3 in the same match, and you have them next to each other, they can do a combination move where they do the moon attack and the sun attack together, and it does a shit ton of damage. So you get your two pre-Gundam Tomino super robot guys coming together to try to win the day. But the other big thing for this is that to support this game, I watched some anime. So I did watch through the original Space Battleship Yamato, a show that I should have watched forever ago. But it fucking rules. Space Battleship Yamato is like ridiculously good. Like I know it's supposed to be good, but then I watched it, I'm like, yeah, no, this is fucking good. This is a really good show. And even though the remake is in V, I haven't watched the remake series yet. I do want to get around to that at some point. The remake clearly is pretty faithful to the original show because the first 10 episodes or like missions of the game are basically Yamato episodes, and they're all episodes that are also in the original series. In Yamato, that show that's some good shit. And I very much enjoyed watching that. I also watched Getter Robo Armageddon, which is the specific flavor of Getter Robo that Super Robot Wars V uses. For all of the Go Nagai series, which is like Majinger and Getter Robo, there's just like a billion of all of them, and so every Super Robot Wars game seems to use some combination or other of them. Getter Robo Armageddon is really cool because it is an OVA series it's got a little bit of a complicated production. The first 3, or maybe it's 4 episodes were directed by Imagawa Yasuhiro, who is the Mobile Fighter G Gundam director, Giant Robo, old school Sunrise guy. And then they move on to a different director for a complicated production reasons I didn't get too into with research. But the premise of Getter Robo Armageddon fucking kicks ass. It's basically like an alternate future of a classic Getter Robo where you have the original protagonist of that series, Roma, is in jail at the beginning of Getter Robo Armageddon for having killed Saotome, who is the professor, basically like the professor who builds the Getter Robo, because all these shows have that, it always has that character who's the professor who built the robot, and apparently he killed this guy Saotome, and he's been put in jail, but then they have to bring him out of jail because Saotome's not dead. He's actually come back, and he's commanding an army of alien invaders that are trying to take the Earth, and so they're like, Roma, I know we put you in jail for having murdered this guy, but actually he's still alive, and actually he's an evil piece of shit, so now we gotta bring you out of jail so you can actually murder him, which is just a great premise. It's like a fucking 80s action movie. It's like Roma in this should be played by a fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just like got such a great setup. And that's kind of like the first 3 or 4 episodes. And then the Armageddon happens. Most of humanity is wiped out. A big crazy Getter Robo shit happens and the Earth is polluted by Getter rays. And Roma gets transported to the future. A bunch of crazy shit goes down. And then you've got a new generation of Getter Robo characters in the wasteland of this post-Armageddon who must kind of find a way to build up a world and fight off these alien invaders that come back again. It's like a crazy series. It's super fun. It's utterly ridiculous. I only have a little bit of Getter Robo knowledge. But I think anyone could basically watch this and kind of get it, because all the Getter Robo stuff is character archetypes that you'll be familiar with just through osmosis of seeing any anime. And so you can kind of get into it. I definitely recommend checking it out. I didn't buy the physical release, but it does have a physical one. So you can get it that way. And then the other big series that I watched in preparation for Super Robot Wars V was Martian Successor Nadeshka, which is one of the other main series here, or Kido Senkan Nadeshko, as it's called in Japanese, which is mobile battleship Nadeshko. And Martian Successor Nadeshko, also a really great show. This is like 1996 vintage. It is not itself a Gainax show, but it's very Gainax influenced. It's, that era of the mid 90s. It's super otaku involved. It's very kind of Gunbuster adjacent, I would say, where it's got that similar mix of Gunbuster of like a lot of referential humor. Like the title of the show in Japanese, Mobile Battleship Yamato or Nadeshko, is obviously a parody of Mobile Suit Gundam Space Battleship Yamato. Nadeshko itself is a reference to Yamato Nadeshiko, which is a kind of the term for a classical Japanese beauty. So it's like the whole show's title is a parody in Japanese, and it's got a lot of crazy anime jokes in it. There's an in-fiction, in-universe Super Robot show called Gekiganger 3, which is a fake Getter Robo, basically, that all the characters are obsessed with. Specifically, all the Martians are obsessed with it, and they're like super into Gekiganger 3, and they're like, life must be like Getter Robo, basically, or it's not no life at all. But it also, like something like a Gunbuster, has a bunch of like super in-depth, really weirdly intricate sci-fi stuff. Space Battle or Martian Successor Nadeshko is all about these the boson jumps, which are teleports, and it's got this sort of like faux science about like how the teleportation works, and it just spends a huge amount of time getting into the intricacies of the nature of like quantum mechanics and all that kind of stuff, kind of like Gunbuster does with like relativity theory and stuff like that. And Nadeshko also has a lot of like striking, very intense dramatic moments. It's not as good as a Gunbuster, but it's still quite a good show. And I enjoyed it a lot. The really weird thing about Nadeshko, though, is that the thing in Super Robot Wars V is not the TV version. It is the movie sequel, Martian Successor Nadeshko, The Prince of Darkness. And that movie is fucking wild because Nadeshko itself has a very odd ending where it basically, I did a lot of research on the production, but it basically kind of like, they had way more plot than what they could actually resolve. And so they ended up doing a little bit of a cop-out of where they kind of just don't resolve a lot of the main big plot stuff. And they just say, well, the two lead characters that are two romantic leads, they kiss at the end and they hook up. And that's good enough to be an ending. And so it's got this kind of happy ending. A lot of the bigger kind of space opera storyline is not really resolved. Then a few years later, they make this movie, The Prince of Darkness. They wanted to make more of the TV show. They couldn't do it. Eventually settled on making this movie. And the movie's very weird. It's like 2/3 of a movie because most of the movie is about getting the crew back together. And then after they get the crew back together of the Nadeshko, the crew doesn't do anything, and a totally unrelated thing resolves the plot. And so it is like a classic TV movie, or like movie that's a sequel to a TV show where it's about like, let's get the gang back together and have little vignettes reintroducing all these characters. And they do that, and then they only have 10 minutes of the movie left after they've reintroduced all the characters. So they can't do anything with them. So it's kind of a weird movie. It's a particularly weird movie, though, because it takes the sort of happy ending of the TV show and makes it incredibly dark, where off screen between the TV show and the movie, the two leads, the two romantic leads to the original show, are seemingly killed off screen. But they aren't actually killed. One of them is taken by the Martians, who are the bad guys, and is basically turned into a living computer that they use to do their crazy teleportation jumps. And the other one, our male lead, who's kind of like our action lead of the series, Akito, he also was kidnapped by the Martians, and he was experimented on. He ultimately escaped, but he was robbed of all of his physical sensations. So he can't see, he can't hear, he has no sense of taste, which is particularly brutal because the whole thing is he wanted to be a cook, and he wanted to start a ramen shop after he married his romantic partner and all this stuff. And he can't do any of that shit because all of his physical senses have been robbed. And the series ends with him killing the bad guys, saving his romantic partner who was turned into this kind of living computer thing. And then he just leaves and goes off to space, never to see anyone ever again, as this sort of weird Dark Avenger-like character. And is just this incredibly sour, bitter ending to this series that takes this happy ending that was, not the best ending ever, but was a satisfying ending, and just makes it so unnecessarily dark, where our two heroes never reunite. One of them has been robbed of his like dream that he had always pursued of wanting to be a great ramen chef, and he goes to parts unknown, and the other never knows or gets to see who her beloved is and like what has happened to him. And so one of the things about Super Robot Wars V is that it gets to take that general scenario, but not take it into such a needlessly negative and bummer of a direction. And so it was honestly like a huge relief to play it, because they don't do that ending. Instead, in the game, those two characters get reunited. It's kind of important that they get back together again, and that Octo kind of gets off of his kind of Batman Dark Avenger bullshit, and he is like, that he can still have a happy life even if he can't taste ramen. It's like you got prospects, dude. Like, you're a good guy. You don't have to just leave and never come back again. And so it is one of the things that's fun about Super Robot Wars, is that they can kind of rehabilitate stories that don't really work. Because I'll say that, like, I liked the TV show Nadeshiko, but I'm not like the world's biggest fan of it. When I watched the movie, I was like, this movie is weird and kind of crazy as a follow-up to this TV show. And I looked up people's reactions to it, and people hate they hate that movie, which I totally understand why. Because if you are a big fan of this TV show, it just takes a huge shit on the stuff you liked about the TV show. And so it is fun to play this game and kind of see an alternate take on the movie that gets to have more stuff with the characters, expand out some of that stuff. It's the same thing that honestly all these games do with Sheen and Seed Destiny as well, is that they take a lot of the ideas of Gundam Seed Destiny and Sheen and his storyline, and they just do it a little bit better than the TV show was able to do. And it's just one of the things that's very fun about playing these games is this weird kind of pastiche of getting to see these weird scenarios like, seeing Amuro talk to Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Honestly, getting to see Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion talk to anybody who's a normal human being is just a powerful relief. It highlights how much that dude just needed a guy he could talk to. He just needed a dude, and he's just surrounded by weird motherfuckers all over the place. She just needs a regular ass person for him to talk to. And in the world of Neon Genesis Evangelion, even Amuro counts as a regular ass dude relative to those weird ass motherfuckers. And so you get all that kind of stuff. And then you also do get some of these kind of like deep dives into specific stories like they do for Nadeshiko here that really get to kind of do a different take on those. And so it's been fun about playing Super Robot Wars V, is just seeing that same thing that kind of Y did with that whole set of characters with like Lelouch from Code Geass and the Gundam Wing Boys and all that shit. But come over here and it's like, no, now it's the Nadeshiko people. It's Yamato. They have all the Full Metal Panic characters, and that's a huge amount of fun. Fucking Hathaway's here, but he gets to be happy because he's not a weird terrorist boy. It's just, there's something so fun about getting to experience all these stories in weird ways, and a great excuse to watch a bunch of very cool anime as well.
That's awesome. I love hearing about the weird rabbit holes you go down. And now I'm thinking about how do we need to plan out our Leiji Matsumoto season of Japanimation Station so we can do all the Yamato stuff? Because I've never watched it either, and I really want to, and it could be fun.
It is kind of crazy to me how inaccessible OG Yamato stuff is over here. Because you have the original TV show, and then there are several movies. Some of them are like, there's a compilation movie. There's also the sequel movie. That sequel movie got turned into a TV show, but none of that stuff is accessible over here, even to the point of where some of them, I basically couldn't find at all. I've only watched the original Yamato, but I also was like, I should go and like see if I can find torrents or something of these other things. In some of the movies in the third Yamato show, I just couldn't find anything of to download. It's crazy. I haven't done like a deep dive on the rights to see if there's something weird there going on, but it's kind of nuts that there's just no. You can see the original season of Space Battleship Yamato online very easily in really good condition. Like, that's fine. Anything after that original TV show, though, it's a fucking crapshoot.
Which is crazy, yeah. Like, Discotech did do Galaxy Express 999, which is the other big Leiji Matsumoto. They have that full thing. There's like one Blu-ray set that has all of it now. And I feel like if anyone did it, it would be Discotech at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've tried, but there must be some kind of rights craziness with it, because that's got to be the biggest gap of anime history that is like inaccessible when you think about its import on everything,
Yeah, and I do want to stress, like, if people are interested, they should watch it. Like, again, it's very easy to find a really nice torrent online. That the torrent I had also did something that like all these things should do, which is during the end credits, they just use the subtitle track to just put in weird production notes about, like, this episode was animated on this date and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, everything should do this all the time. I've had some physical releases
has done that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I see this, like, man, everything should always do this. It's so weird that it's very rare that you get it. But yeah,
that's like a holdover from the early DVD days, where one of the special features DVDs would do sometimes was text commentaries. Mm-hmm. All the Star Trek shows had these back in the day, where like Michael Okuda and the Star Trek experts would do these like long text commentaries that would play under the episodes. And I remember watching some old Star Trek episodes on Blu-ray and like just having those on and being like, oh, they shot this scene on this day, and Leonard Nimoy did this, and it was like cool to learn.
Yeah, and I just thought, like, specifically just, just a couple little nuggets, little pieces of trivia just over the end credits while you listen to this, like, absolute fucking killer song about a red scarf, which is the ending theme of Yamato.
All right, one last video game to talk about today, Sean, and that is Halo Campaign Evolved, the worst named game of 2026.
Yeah.
I did wind up picking this up for the PlayStation 5, and I played it there, and I very happily have on my shelf right now my PS5 copies of Gears of War Reloaded and Halo Campaign Evolved, just to have this weird moment in time where now the two big Xbox franchises are PS5 games, and who knows if that will last or not. But anyway, I did wind up playing this. I was kind of curious about it. It then did get very good reviews. And my brother also wanted to play it, and we wound up playing it in co-op together, because we've always played the Halo games that way together. And this is the first 343 game since Halo 4 that has had couch co-op. They promised it for Halo 5 and 6, and then after launch said, never mind, because that's been the 343 experience. But this is the first game under the Halo Studios banner. Obviously, it's the same group of people, but it is 343 became Halo Studios. This is, if you don't know, this is a full remake of the original Halo Combat Evolved. It is not like Halo Anniversary, where Halo Anniversary was a graphical remake, but everything underlying was the same, such that you could toggle on the fly between the Anniversary graphics and the original Xbox One. God damn it, the original Xbox graphics, not Xbox One, because Xbox One is a different thing. Fucking stupid console. Anyway, so Halo Campaign Evolved is a full remake. It is... graphically, it is done in Unreal Engine 5. A lot of the underlying mechanics are still, my understanding is, it is the Bungie Blam engine that was what they built all the original Halo games in. And so it definitely, I think it's one of the later versions of it, because the feel of the game is very Halo 3, Halo Reach in terms of some of how it plays, and I think they just pulled in some of that. But then graphically, it was all rebuilt from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5, because the Slipspace engine that they had built Halo Infinite in had really kind of fallen apart. If you've seen Halo Infinite, you know why they aren't using that anymore. Yeah. Anyway, it is a really interesting game, and I think there's kind of two stories going on here. There is like the narrow, how is the game that Halo Studios made? Is it good? Is it bad? And then there is all the conversation around it. And I think, and like the sales and all of that stuff. And they're two very different things. So I will just say on the narrow level of, and what matters most, how is the game? It's a really great remake of Halo Combat Evolved. I really liked it. I know it has controversies and there's nitpicks and there's different things different people think. But I think, first and foremost, it is graphically what Halo Anniversary should have been. It is a really great refresh of the visuals, but it is extremely faithful to the art direction of the original. So it is taking all of the basic art direction and layout of how the game looked and the original color scheme, and it's very faithful to all of that, but just realizing it with 2026 technology. I think the best comparison I could probably give for it is Metroid Prime Remastered on Nintendo Switch, which is also, that is more a Halo Anniversary scenario where the underlying engine is the original Metroid Prime, but graphically it is a full remake, but it is such a good faithful remake that when I was first playing through Metroid Prime Remastered, I just thought, wow, what a good remaster. And it wasn't until I think I watched the Digital Foundry comparison and realized, no, this is a full graphical remake. It's just so good at taking the original GameCube art direction and doing it for modern tech that it looks like the game you remember, but in like the best version of your memory. And that's kind of how I would describe Halo Campaign Evolved. I think it's a really, really gorgeous game. I just consistently, level after level, was looking at it and just jaw dropped. I think it is one of the best looking video games I've seen, certainly one of, if not the best, of this generation that I have played. It is a really, really impressive piece of work. Some of the controversy it's courted is people who don't like some of, I think, particularly the upscaling that Unreal Engine 5 involves. It's not using like DLSS or FSR, it's using whatever is built into UE5 that kind of upscales. And you do get some of the upscaling noise that you see that I think, for better or for worse, it's just kind of part of what games look like now, and is something that certainly that's like probably the biggest thing that next gen stuff can help us overcome. Like if you were playing this on PS5 Pro, you wouldn't have that problem, because my understanding is PSSR2 does do really, really well on this game, and that is what is used instead. But overall, I think I've seen much worse implementations of the upscaling noise and some of that stuff that can happen. And overall, I think it's worth the trade-offs because they're using some really cool tech here. In particular, this game's use of lighting, and I know it uses the full hardware lumen and all of that stuff. It's incredible. And Halo 1, if you've ever played the original Xbox game, you know how cool the lighting is in that game. That it has a lot of like dark interiors. It's got all the plasma weapons that send light as you shoot the bolts and stuff like that. And this game just really goes to town on that. Like, if you look back at Halo Anniversary, which is a very bad, I think, remake, remaster of Halo 1, one of the things that game did is it just, as a lot of remasters have done historically, it just brightened everything. So if there was a dark hallway, it is now a bright, evenly lit hallway. And that's how Halo Anniversary did everything. And Halo Campaign Evolved knows what it's doing from the very first Pillar of Autumn level, where if anything, it goes in the other direction. It will, like, even more aggressively darken an area because we now have the technology to do with like HDR and some of the ray tracing and lumen and all of that stuff, really cool lighting effects within these spaces and have light bouncing around. So, if you love original Halo Combat Evolved and you love the art direction of that game, this is such a great, faithful reimagining of that with modern technology. And I just consistently like the second level, the level called Halo, kind of on my first play took me forever to get through because I would just keep looking at the sky and being like, they fucking nailed the specific shade of blue that original Halo used, that Halo Anniversary completely missed, and the way that blue plays with the specific green of the grass, and then you get all the Covenant colors that come in. All of that stuff is just so incredibly well done that on a technical level, this is far and away the best thing Halo Studios 343 has done. It's a really beautiful game. It's the first game that that they've made that properly looks like Halo to me, that like really gets it. I think Halo Infinite took some of its cues from that, but Halo Infinite also is a technological mess of a game that has a lot of problems. So this game looks really well. It looks really good. It performs mostly very good. It does have a graphics like mode setting where you can lock it to 30 FPS. I don't know why you would do that today, but you can if you want. I played it, and I think everyone played it on performance mode, and that targets 60. It is mostly a locked 60. There are moments where when enough crazy shit is going on, it will break down. I think the level that is the worst for this is probably Keys, because there's the middle part of Keys where you are going through that big lake area where there's like 5 hunters and all the Covenant and all the Flood, and it's absolutely insane. And I saw some slowdown there. I saw some slowdown on Assault on the Control Room, I think, has some areas like that are just really, really big. And so some of that stuff could be evened out. But overall, graphically, I think it looks and performs really, really good. And I just played it on, the base PS5, and I had a great experience with it. In terms of gameplay, I think it is also a very smart remake. It's basically, its mandate in terms of gameplay is it's Halo 1 with a lot of the later Halo systems brought in. So you have full sprint now, you have aim down sights, all the stuff that 343 has put in. And, for the most part, I think those are still fairly vestigial. The sprint thing is fine, and like it works, especially Halo 1 has a lot of long areas you have to go through. So the sprint, I think, is fine there. And I think on some of the challenges and stuff, it works well. The aim down sights thing is still largely, I still don't really know why they do that. I think there are certain Halo guns that are made for aiming down the sights, like the pistol or the sniper rifle. And there are some where, like the assault rifle, I still do not know why they have that on there, and I do not use it. So that's fine. I use the control scheme that puts it like original Halo, where zoom in is on right stick and it's toggleable, because that is how Halo Zoom should work, and it's how it works best. So
yeah, you know that you're not meant to aim down sights because they fucking didn't put sights on those guns. Like
I know, yeah.
you can't aim down sights on an assault rifle because they just didn't fucking put one on there. Realistically speaking, should they probably have put a sight on their gun? Yeah, but they didn't because they didn't. I don't know. They're just really good at sort of vibing out where the bullets are going to go.
But as it has been since Halo 5, when 343 added all of this, it's very easy to ignore. You can use it as you've always played Halo and just use the assault rifle as you normally would and use the pistol as you normally would and blah, blah, blah. But they have also added in, basically, it's none of the, 343 era weapons, but all of the Bungie era, most Bungie era weapons are in this game. There are a couple that are missing, like the carbine never shows up. The DMR never shows up, stuff like that. But most of the guns from Halo 2, 3, and Reach do show up at different points in this game. Like the needle rifle from Halo Reach is brought in, which I think is a really cool thing to have. That's really fun to have. The sword, which was in original Halo, it's just you couldn't use it. Now, when the sword is there, you can pick it up and use it. It's funny, when you fight the hunters, they have removed you can kill hunters with one shot from the pistol, but the hunters are very susceptible to those swords. So if you can get behind a hunter and stab those motherfuckers, they will die very fast. So that is the way to kill hunters now. But then a lot of the other guns show up. The battle rifle does not show up in the base campaign. It is in the 3 bonus levels. And then if you play campaign remix with some of the skulls on, that basically add a kind of a Fiesta style mode where the guns are randomized on the ground, you can find a battle rifle that way. And just as you go through, you get all the different guns. And I think that's very fun. It's particularly if you're someone who knows Halo Combat Evolved really well. It is fun to go through the game and see which guns they've added in and which you can use and everything. I still think the best gun in the game is the pistol. It looks more like the Halo 3 Magnum, but it still has quite a bit of punch to it. And this is still a game that rewards precision, obviously, very heavily. So I found myself using that a lot. My favorite thing they added, actually, is the SMG from Halo 2 is in here. It is more like the SMG from Halo 3, but it is really good, particularly on those flood levels. That SMG is awesome. It is the good version of the SMG from Halo 3, and it is actually surprisingly fun to use, because I've always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about the SMG, because in Halo 2 it kind of sucks, but in Halo 3 it was good, and it's very useful in this game, so I enjoy having that there, and it just adds some variety. The original weapon set in Halo Combat Evolved was pretty small, so having the extra guns there is fun, and I don't think it, hurts the challenge or anything. I think the game still feels balanced there. And then the enemies are still basically the enemies you remember. They've got some extra higher level ones that will come in. They do add more flood types in the second half of the game that are taken from particularly Halo 3 and its flood stuff. And then in the bonus levels, they do have the brutes, but they did not put the brutes in the base game. There is a lot of the game has no multiplayer. It is just the campaign, but the campaign is very replayable. Obviously, it always has been, but they've also they have a truly ridiculous number of skulls. There are 3 skulls to find in every level, so there's 50 of them in the game. And I did go through and find every skull. There's a lot of fun ones, including there's skulls you can turn on that basically put on some of the restrictions of original Halo 1. So you can one of the skulls will turn off sprint, one of the skulls will turn off aim down sights, one of the skulls, the assault rifle is the Halo 3 assault rifle, so it's got 34 rounds. You can restore it back to 60 like it was in original Halo Combat Evolved, like God intended. So all of those skulls are there, they're fun to find, and there's a lot of remix skulls where you can go back in and it'll completely randomize enemy placement. So you might see Flood on the Pillar of Autumn, or Brutes will come in on the Halo level and stuff like that and make it more unpredictable. So there's definitely a lot in there that makes the campaign very, very replayable. It has a couple of little problems. Some of those have been patched. Some of those, this next week as we're recording this, are supposed to be patched. So when my brother and I were playing through it, one thing we immediately noticed is plasma pistols from enemies were killing us in one hit, and that shouldn't happen. Plasma pistols should take out your shields, but it should then take an additional hit. And that, we were like, what? Are we crazy? It's like if we were feeling gaslit, that was a glitch. They did already patch that. That's fixed. The other big one in terms of enemies is jackals. They don't behave right. When you are shooting the jackal in, there's that little gap in its armor that you shoot, and then they stagger, and then you shoot them in the head. The staggering has not been working, and it's been, you can get it to work, but you have to be really weirdly precise. And they confirmed that is also seemingly a glitch, because they are patching that in the new patch. In terms of the visuals, the only big, I think, visual problem the game has is as it shipped, it has some film grain and chromatic aberration turned on by default, and you cannot turn it off. And I think both of those things are things that you should never have on mandatory when you are dealing with any kind of upscaling, because upscaling does not like grain, and I think the chromatic aberration is just way too aggressive for this game. So they are allowing you in the new patch to turn those off, and I am excited to see how the game looks with those off, because I think it will be an improvement if you can toggle that stuff off and on. So those are some things they're fixing, and there were a couple little balance things, but overall, I had a blast playing this game. It plays really well. It kind of feels like the Bungie Halo game, where it just feels like all of the big ideas Bungie had are kind of put in together in kind of a soup in this game, but with the, incredible level design of original Halo Combat Evolved. In the latter half of the game, they did do some more extensive remaking, so the first 5 levels are basically one-for-one the levels as you remember them. The big ones that they've redone are the library, and then 2 betrayals are, I would say, kind of new levels based on the originals, like inspired by those. And I think that is fair. The library in particular is mostly a new level inspired by the library. It still gives you that sense of this kind of long, grinding, gauntlet that you're going through, but it has more variety of spaces that you fight through. It's not the same loop of like the same hallway 7 times on your way to the top, and I think overall it is an improvement. And for 2 betrayals, they have done a couple of things so that while you are going back through the assault on the control room spaces, the order is a little different. You go on some different paths. It doesn't feel as much like in the original as just that level backwards. And so I think they added some very smart things there. But a lot of Halo 1 didn't need any fixing, and they haven't given it any fixing, and it's fine. So overall, I really enjoyed my time with it. I've played it a lot. I would like to play it even more once they add this patch, because I'd like to go back in and see some of it again that way. But overall, I think it is a very solid remake, and it is, I would say, by far the best package that 343 has shipped since they took over the series with, I was going to say Halo 4, but it was actually Halo Anniversary was their first thing that they shipped. And I think, this is the best thing they have shipped during their stewardship with the series. It is a very good version of Halo 1. It is also a limited version of Halo 1. It is Halo 1 without any multiplayer. It is the first Halo game ever to ship without any multiplayer component. Even Halo Anniversary back in the day had a bonus disc that wasn't it like a version of the Halo 3 multiplayer suite?
It was with extra stuff? Reach. It was
Reach.
It was maps for Reach, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So even that did have a multiplayer component, and this does not. And it is kind of weird. I mean, the completely single-player first-person shooter is effectively a dead genre. It's basically just id's Doom games is kind of it. And so, from what we have seen, Halo Campaign Evolved has sold poorly. The best analytics we've gotten are that it seems to have sold about 1.2 million copies, 42% on Xbox, 41% on PlayStation, 17% on Steam. It has done particularly poorly on Steam, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the obvious ones that this analyst I'm reading from says that I think is very true is that if you search Halo on Steam, you will also find the Master Chief Collection.
Yeah.
It is cheaper. It has everything. It has multiplayer. If you're going to spend $50 on Halo, you could spend $40 on Master Chief Collection and then $10 on whatever you want. So I understand why people would do that. It has definitely had soft performance on PlayStation, and then it has had about another 2.1 million playing it on Game Pass, which kind of tells you a lot about why Game Pass is a problem, because it's outsold. It's just 2 times as many people are playing it on Game Pass versus actually buying a physical retail copy. $50 is it's not a full priced game, but it is probably too high priced for a game with no multiplayer component to speak of. Even Gears of War Reloaded, which to be fair was not a full from the ground up remake, it was a remaster of Gears of War Ultimate from back in the day, but that was $40 and did have the full Gears of War multiplayer suite with it for modern consoles. And from what we can tell, that did sell better on PlayStation than Halo has sold on PlayStation. And this all happened at the same time as Activision has put out those new ports, and they are just straight ports of Black Ops 1 and 2 on PlayStation, and those have sold over 12 million copies combined on PlayStation 4 and 5. And they have done really, really well. And so there's a couple of things going on here where, like, on the one hand, I do feel like this is a solid step in the right direction for Halo Studios. On the other hand, what the hell does Halo do after this? Where do you go after you've remade Halo 1? What do they have next? The whole sales situation is such that I really don't know what Halo is anymore,
Yeah, because I think like compounded with that is like, Halo Infinite's done. They've stopped updating that game a while ago. That game we know, I mean we now definitively know because there have been some insider leaks that it was going to at some point, it was planned to have had campaign updates that would have expanded that story about the endless or whatever the fuck it was. And that obviously never went anywhere. And so yeah, there's just a huge question of, I mean, hey, there are a bunch of other Halo games you can continue to remake, and you can, do another remake of Halo 2. There's never been a remake of Halo 3, so you could do a remake of that and ODST and Reach, and then you can really start eating your own tail and do a remake of 4 and 5, and then remake Halo Infinite. That's that train can just keep going for a while. But yeah, like the question of what is the actual like forward step for Halo is an absolute mystery. Like, what do you do in terms of the narrative? What do you do in terms of the setting? Do you just do Gears of War E-Day and do like something set before Halo Reach? Because Halo already unfortunately did the Gears of War E-Day thing where they did their like, gritty prequel. So yeah, I think it is a really big question about like what is Halo as an ongoing concern. Because I think like those sales for Halo Campaign Evolved don't seem terrible to me if it was like not a load bearing pillar in the franchise. The fact that there's no Halo game in sight, that it's been a long time since Halo Infinite came out, and presumably they are making something, but we have no idea. And if they are, how far away it is. So Halo Campaign Evolved is like the only Halo thing we've seen in a long time, since maybe like season 2 of the Halo TV show. And so yeah, it is just like kind of in an awkward position as a product where it feels like it has a lot more weight pushing on it than it realistically should have for the kind of thing that it is.
Right. And, I obviously one goal of this game was to give the team at Halo Studios experience in Unreal Engine 5 and to figure out what to do with Halo in that technological framework. And I do think on that level it is a success. I think people who are shitting on this game for using UE5 are doing it without giving the game a shot. Like, I think I understand why people are cynical about UE5. UE5 does have a lot of natural synergy with how Halo looks, though. Like, the things it is good at are the things Halo is good at, and I think it makes sense for them to be using it. And I think this is a good example of that, and it'll get better in the future because now they have a full game under their belts. But it is also a full-priced, retail game that has to sell, and it also clearly part of it was trying to introduce PlayStation to Halo. It didn't sell great there, but also now Asha Sharma is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on whether they're doing exclusivity. So what is that? I don't know. If they wanted to sell to PlayStation, clearly, like unambiguously, if they had put out Halo the Master Chief Collection on PlayStation and sold it for $40, it would have sold millions and millions of copies. Like, if that Black Ops thing is anything to look at, like, it probably wouldn't have sold Black Ops numbers because Call of Duty is Call of Duty and Black Ops is Black Ops. But I would imagine millions of people would have bought Halo the Master Chief Collection on PlayStation. And that would also, frankly, be a lot less work and time and money to just get working on PlayStation than it would be building an entire Halo campaign from the ground up, right? I'm not going to say it's easy, but it already exists on Steam. It's already on Xbox. PlayStation's architecture isn't that different. They could get it running fairly easily. So, the part of this is also we just don't know what Xbox's strategy is. Does Asha Sharma want any more games coming out on PlayStation? She probably doesn't know. Twitter hasn't told her yet.
Yeah, apparently, they've done that beta for Gears of War E-Day, and apparently if you play it on PC with a DualSense, it has, like, all the DualSense features, like the rumble and the triggers and the fucking buttons and shit in there. And obviously we know that there's a functionally finished version of that game that they made for PlayStation that now has been scrapped. But if you didn't know that, if you played that beta on PC, there you go. There's your PlayStation version of Gears of War.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a weird situation where I do like this specific release. I think it's good. I think if you like Halo, if you like the original Halo, if you've never played Halo before, it's a good starting point, but it's not what the market wanted, and it's clearly not. It's not the thing that Halo needs or Xbox needs right now. But I don't know what those need right now, because what they might need is invasive life-saving surgery, and we're not getting that.
Yeah, or just like a miracle game that like is your God of War 2018 of Halo games, where it's like
Yes.
you've taken this kind of legacy franchise but made a incredible sequel that retains some of the essential elements of the classic versions, but turns it into something very different that attracts a brand new audience. And that's obviously way easier said than done, Like Gears of War or God of War 2018, that was a hell of a fucking game. And you cannot expect every franchise to just crank one of those fuckers out. That's kind of a miracle product to make.
Now that you say that, though, I like the idea of that. Just have Master Chief go to Norse mythology. He just falls through a portal. He gets isekai'd into Norse mythology, and he falls in with his gravity hammer, and that is his main weapon now as he goes through and fights. Honestly, that sounds pretty sick.
Yeah, and he has a son, and he's just like, come here, boy.
Does the son also have armor? Is just a little Master Chief?
Yes, yeah, he's just got a little Master Chief armor on. Yeah.
And they're burning Cortana. Cortana's dead, and they have to, I know she's an AI. They have to smash her microchip and leave it on the mountain or something.
Yeah, just throws some silicon off a fucking mountaintop. Say goodbye.
All right, Sean, do you want to do the darkest monthly 10 we have ever, or maybe will ever do?
Yes, I'm very excited. I gave you a powerful task, Jonathan, you needed to fulfill, that I wanted you to cast your gaze into the future to see what would you think the different potential outcomes that the video game industry might have now that we are at this kind of pivotal crossroads that we're currently at. And so I gave you your scrying mirror and wanted you to gaze deep and tell me what you found.
Yes, so what you said specifically was to give me 10 visions for what the video game industry would look like in 50 years, from best case scenario to worst case scenario. They're not all 50 years. I don't think you cared about that.
Yeah, I did,
but they're just, so what I did is as 10 possible futures for the video game industry from our best case scenario to our worst case scenario. And we delayed the recording of this episode by like 2 weeks, so I had some extra time on this one, and I went to town. This is the most I've ever put into one of these, Sean.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited to find out where might we be headed.
I also want to be clear, when I say it's from best case scenario to worst case scenario, it is best case scenario for video games specifically, not for humanity. Because you'll notice some of these are not great for humanity, but they're okay for video games, all right?
Okay.
All right. Number 10, best case scenario, the best I could possibly imagine. It is the year 2027. It turns out the Infinity Stones are real, and a Thanos-esque figure who just really, really cares about the health of the video game market collects them all, does the snap, and erases from existence Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, and all the other major games as platforms, eating up the majority of the audience, also ensuring that if a game ever gets that big again, it too will be erased. With the snap, all of the major AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, all of those, are erased from existence and their CEOs dusted, with all data centers disappearing and their RAM hordes redistributed to the populace, causing an immediate collapse in component pricing. Microsoft is also dissolved as a company, and all the developers and publishers under Xbox become independent, healthy entities once again. Labor laws in the United States are changed to bar the mass firings and layoffs that have plagued the industry. Universal healthcare and universal basic income is adopted to make game development a more tenable career track, and antitrust becomes one of the chief priorities of all American lawmakers regardless of political affiliation. Of course, these benefits also now exist for industries other than video games too, but our Thanos figure, he was just doing it for the games. Everybody at Sony who was responsible for the games as service push is dusted out of existence, as is everyone responsible for the end of the physical media policy. Nintendo is mostly unaffected, but their lawyers have a Grinch-like change of heart overnight to stop going after fan projects online. A new golden age for the video game industry is upon us, and our Thanos figure finally rests to watch the sun rise on a grateful universe.
I love this. The comment with like the Nintendo lawyers. You said Grinch. Like in my head, it's fucking Christmas Carol, and it's Scrooge. He like opens up the window and it's like, "You there, boy? What day is it? It's when the Metroid 2 remake comes out. Oh, great! It's not too late. It's not too late." And he goes, "It's like we gotta shelve this lawsuit." And this fucking
AM2R can flourish.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god. Yeah, I will say though, it says a lot that the most positive scenario I could come up with is just magic.
Yes.
Magic happens, and that fixes our problems.
Yeah, we just got to get those Infinity Stones. It'll all be fine.
Yes. I also do enjoy the idea of Thanos, but he just cares about video games.
Yeah.
He's not out to kill anyone. He's not out to... There's no grand philosophy. He just wants the video games to be better. All right. Number 9. It is the year 2127. A century earlier, a combination of the long-term closure of major shipping lanes after America's war with Iran, the economically ruinous bursting of the AI bubble, the destruction of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, the dissolution of NATO, and a rapid increase in armed global conflicts on a scale not seen since the Second World War, and other idiotic happenings during the second presidency of Donald Trump caused a global economic depression of deep and calamitous ruin at a scale unprecedented in human history. In the ensuing decades, hundreds of millions die in the famines, wars, and global displacements that follow. Eventually, with a third of humanity dead and most national boundaries dissolved, the dust settles, and the survivors of this dark period have such a deep, abiding hatred for the evils of capitalism that the societies mankind subsequently remakes rid itself of this and other evils of the 20th and 21st centuries forever. The video game industry as we know it ceases to exist, of course, alongside all other industries as we know them. But the gradual rise of more equitable societies leads us down the path of a Star Trek-style communist utopia, where, with mankind's basic needs met, we pool our collective resources to create and achieve great things, such as space travel, interstellar colonization, and cures for diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. As a side benefit of this, video games do eventually rise again. Not as a crass arm of commerce, but as an art form people make and engage with because they love it. Great video games are made once again, and this time, there are no microtransactions, no battle passes, no live services, no V-Bucks. By 2127, a time when computing power is widespread and accessible, gaming enters a true golden age, one of many art forms used to help humanity reckon with the darkness of the past 100 years and look forward to a brighter tomorrow.
I think that's a very beautiful vision, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing it with us.
It involved a third of all humanity dying, but yes.
You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, am I right?
Basically, for number 10 and 9, I was basically like, how do we get rid of capitalism? And one path was Infinity Stones, and one path was most of humanity dies. And I think those are probably the two realistic scenarios here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The motherfucker sometimes got to drop a meteor, you know what I'm saying?
Number 8. It is the year 2029. A new United States president is swept into office on anti-big tech fervor with a broad public mandate to stop going to war in the Middle East and instead go to war with AI companies. As data centers are dismantled and the AI firms rapidly go out of business, there is a gradual reduction in the price of components. While many other problems remain, including our labor laws leading to mass layoffs and a broken antitrust system resulting in too many mergers, the video game industry does at least start to rebound in time for a new generation of consoles in 2034. In the intervening years, the PS6 and Xbox Series, it's series with a Z at the end, that's what they call it. These are more traditional iterative devices. They limped along without much support. Sony sheds users over their restrictive digital delivery policies and wildly high prices, with exclusives continuing to come few and far between, while Xbox finally exits the console market for good in 2031 after a failed strategy of returning to exclusivity while laying everybody off and selling overpriced hardware. Meanwhile, Nintendo chugs along doing Nintendo things and commands an increasingly large slice of the console market, such that by 2034, PlayStation is only able to occupy a relatively niche space with its new machine, but it's at least able to come in at reasonable prices, and the public's loss of interest in Fortnite and Roblox over the intervening years leads to a renewed interest in good old-fashioned console gaming between Sony and Nintendo. Many people still hanging on to their 15-year-old PS5s are finally able to upgrade and play the latest games from Insomniac, Sony Santa Monica, Guerrilla, and Sucker Punch. Meanwhile, Naughty Dog's Intergalactic is still missing in action, as the studio has turned into a mysterious and impenetrable cult-like den where an increasingly reclusive Neil Druckmann lives on the top floor pissing in jars, like Howard Hughes. But gaming lives on to fight another day.
There was a moment about halfway through that where I thought you were going to say that, and then Sega decides to make another console. Then it's Sega and Nintendo once again.
We'll get there, Sean. We'll get there.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to burst your bubble.
But yeah, how does that one sound to you?
Plausible. That sounds plausible.
All right, number 7. It is the year 2030. Sony's unmatched hubris has led to the PS6 becoming the most disastrous console of all time. Announced with a 3-hour lecture from Mark Cerny explaining the benefits of path tracing, even the enthusiast audience has to squint to see the value in the machine, which launches in November 2027 for $2,999. It can play no physical discs of any kind. There is no disc-to-digital program for people with existing libraries, and the system drops all backwards compatibility for the PS4 and PS5 in favor of doing more full-priced re-releases like The Last of Us Part 1 Remastered and Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut Remastered. Most games are still released cross-gen between PS5 and PS6, but despite the extremely negligible differences between versions, you do have to buy them separately. And on the PS6 specifically, buying is actually no longer an option, as all games are only sold as rentals, where players must pay $80 or more for a limited 3-month license, after which they must pay full price again to re-up access. The system is now always online and doing near constant DRM checks, which turns out to deeply harm video game performance. The system's first year on the market includes absolutely no new exclusive games besides remakes and remasters. The controller is based on the unused boomerang design for the PS3, but now have handles that are covered entirely in touchpads that still, after 15 fucking years, have zero functionality in the system. As expected, the console is a colossal disaster, bought by almost no one, and quickly blacklisted by much of the third-party industry when, 2 months after launch, Sony announces they are doubling their cut of PS Store sales from 30% to 60%. For its lifetime, the PS6 sells less than 500,000 units, a bit less than Nintendo's Virtual Boy in the 90s, and is discontinued in late 2029. Amidst this colossal clusterfuck, Xbox actually manages to get its shit together. With their new system, the Xbox 5, they drop all the naming schemes, launching in 2028 at a modest $999, offering an optional disc drive, letting you keep your digital games, and even offering additional incentives for wayward PlayStation owners to come back. Healthy competition is thus restored to the video game industry, albeit at a terrible cost, as the Xbox slowly but surely builds back up an audience, and Nintendo continues to eat everyone's lunch. Going into the 2030s, gaming limps along. Not dead, though not quite healthy.
And that's when Sega.
Yes.
That's when it happens.
Not quite in that one, but yeah, that is the what if the Sony shits the bed scenario, which, might be good for everyone, because competition is good.
Something's going to happen here.
All right. Number 6. It is the year 2040. Gaming has endured a brutal decade. In the face of the many headwinds of the late 2020s, the AI data center boom, spiking component prices, mass industry-wide layoffs, out-of-control budgets and development timetables, and so on, the Western games industry had completely collapsed by the early 2030s. Microsoft completely divests itself of the Xbox division shortly after the disastrous launch of Project Helix, while Sony's PS6 is such a disaster they collapse too not long after. By the end of the 2030s, video games are not an art form produced in much of the Western world, outside of mobile apps and certain indie games made by the independently wealthy. However, the Japanese industry continues to do relatively well. Nintendo is still able to produce their robust slate of first-party games, and their lower-powered hardware is able to survive the pricing madness, with third-party publishers like Capcom, Sega, FromSoft, and others still boasting robust catalogs. In an unexpected but welcome development, there is a return over the course of the 2030s to an active arcade scene in America. Given the difficulty of individuals affording gaming hardware, the Japanese devs and publishers launch a renewed push for arcades in the West, which prove popular with young people who crave places for authentic connection, and dovetails nicely with the renewed interest in genres like fighting games and the active esports scene. Gradually, new Japanese competitors in the console space emerge to capitalize on this trend, and we return to a sort of 80s, 90s status quo where Japanese game companies lead the conversation. The triumphant launch of the Sega Dreamcast 2 in 2037 even outperforms the Nintendo Switch 3, and as we round into the 2040s, nature begins to heal.
I think this one should be this is the best scenario. This is where Sega rallies finally, pun intended, and they win the console war. It was just there's a long dormant period there near the end, but then they came back, with the surprise attack, and then now we're all Sega people, and that's the best future I can imagine, is if everyone is a Sega fanboy.
Yeah, I'm gonna bump that one back up to number 8. So we'll redo these. That's up at number 8. I think that's true because also I like the idea of the arcade scene coming back. I think that would be good for everyone, you know. And who knows? Honestly, anything is fucking possible. That line about component pricing making arcades more desirable could be totally fucking true in the near future. Who knows?
Yeah, hey, people, they're buying vinyl and CDs. Why not, throw a quarter into that arcade machine?
Yeah.
Play some Pac-Man.
All right, number 5. Moving into the truly dark ones now, Sean. It is the year 2042. All games are now owned and published by a transnational cartel principally funded by the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, who over the past 15 years have gradually gobbled up the entire industry after their big acquisition of EA in 2026. Now, games can only be purchased through bespoke cryptocurrencies routed through one of the coins or apps controlled by various corrupt world leaders like Trump and their family members. Microtransactions are far more invasive than ever before, required for things like buying 10 more jumps in Mario, buying additional ammunition for your gun in Call of Duty, or saving and loading your game. Gaming becomes one of the central networks for global corruption as the worldwide shift into fascist autocracy accelerates, with major bribes to world leaders and oligarchs taking place via Fortnite costumes and Minecraft skins. The subject matter of games is severely limited and dictated by autocratic ideology. Call of Duty games are no longer about endlessly reliving the Cold War by fighting Russian ultranationalists. They're now exclusively focused on slaughtering dissident protest groups. The new Hitman game is all about Agent 47 killing and dismembering various journalists. There are no playable female characters allowed in games anymore. We live in hell.
Is that 5 we're on?
That's 5.
Shit. That took a fucking jump, man.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a big leap between 6 and 5.
And we got a lot deeper to go here, Sean. All right. Number 4. It is the year 2046. Everything is either Fortnite or Roblox now, as over the last 20 years, the entire game industry gradually either went under or was gobbled up in an increasingly complicated web of mergers and acquisitions, leading to Fortnite and Roblox controlling all IP in the history of the medium. Thus, all your favorite video game characters, from Mario to Zelda to Astrobot to Sonic, only now exist as microtransaction DLC skins in Fortnite or content packs in Roblox. Want to play Halo? The closest you can come is a Master Chief skin in Fortnite. Want to play a fighting game? Sorry, you're going to have to dress up as Ryu and Ken in Roblox and try to make some vague approximation of Street Fighter. Want to go back and experience these games as they once existed? Sorry, video game consoles like the PS5 and Switch are no longer manufactured, and in their place are small, cheap set-top boxes that play those ugly-ass games via streaming, since consumers can no longer purchase actual local computing power. Eventually, the term video game itself goes out of fashion, a thing old people say about a short-lived artistic medium that was so poorly preserved nobody can now access its classics any longer, while young people just use Fortnite and Roblox as a verb for their hedonistic after-school hangout sessions.
I mean, honestly, for young people, that's just today. That's just the reality, yes. It's just, that future is just the rest of us have gotten weeded out at that point.
Yeah, it feels dark to me, though, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, very plausible. Very plausible.
Number 3. It is the year 2072. Video games no longer exist. The AI boom of the 2020s led to a status quo where local computing was made completely inaccessible to all but the absolute wealthiest among us, and the most computing power people today have access to is the equivalent of a Chromebook for web apps. With that, all video game consoles and platforms have long since gone by the wayside, and while an effort was made at selling people on game streaming, internet infrastructure never came remotely close enough to make that feasible at scale. The pace of layoffs seen in the mid-2020s only accelerated, and by the mid-2030s, video games as a profession became impossible for anyone but the independently wealthy working as hobbyists, and the lack of an available audience made the skill set die out entirely. Now, in 2072, even if people wanted to start making games again, none now live who remember how to do so. So actual computing experience is out of reach for most individuals. Besides, people have little time to care about the state of affairs, as inflation for food, gas, and all consumer goods has run so wildly out of control that nobody born without significant wealth can survive without working multiple jobs, with most doing extra shifts as delivery drivers or data center caretakers, as they toil under the cruel presidency of an 80-something Baron Trump, serving his 7th consecutive term, following in the footsteps of his father Don Sr. and older brother Don Jr., who have collectively ruled America for over half a century now.
Shit.
It's plausible, sadly. It's honestly...
Yeah. It's from, like, late Roman Empire shit, just for our times.
It's going to be very, very sad. We would be 80 years old. Honestly, we would be dead. We would have killed ourselves. Dead. But yeah.
Our corpses would be 80 years old.
Yes. Number 2. It is the year 2076. Video games no longer exist, and haven't for a very long time, since humanity went completely extinct a bit under 50 years ago, when President Trump, frustrated over the perpetual lack of progress in his idiotic war with Iran, and addled by his ever more broken brain, finally decided to let the nukes fly, leading to an all-out nuclear world war that wiped out most life on Earth in a few short months. The humans are dead, and our games have faded to ash just like our bodies and souls. Playtime is over.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Yep. So that's number 2. That originally was number 1, Sean. And then I looked at the list.
I can see why it was originally number 1. Now I'm curious what superseded, imminent nuclear war and the extinction of the human race.
I just thought it wasn't dark enough. I looked at it and said, that's not dark enough for this list for how bad things are.
Is it like too merciful a release? Is that we all just are killed instantaneously?
I think so. So. Number 1. It is the year 2057. Mankind endures one of its darkest ages. Fascist autocrats have taken over all major countries. Civil rights have been rolled back across the globe. The breakdown of all post-World War II alliances has led to wars around the world, and the economy is controlled by corrupt oligarchs and techno-fascists. AI has made the people bovine, passive, and stupid, and personal computing is a memory of a long-distant past. Video games effectively no longer exist. But in this terrible time, a brave resistance group begins to fight back and learns, in their attempt to bring down the world's most wicked dictator, a clone of Elon Musk, taken out of his tube after the real Musk died doing autoerotic asphyxiation on a Twitter livestream after the dangerous sex act became a viral trend among the many incels populating his social network, that mankind has actually been extinct for countless centuries. All of those suffering under the New World Order are actually computer programs, with very limited amounts of free will, being run through a cruel computer simulation created by robots of a higher order of sentience, who were abandoned by mankind millennia earlier as Earth's resources withered and died. The purpose of this simulation we live in is to ascertain how much bullshit and shitification of all aspects of life an autonomous mind can handle before breaking irreparably, as the robot overlords plan an interstellar conquest to enslave sentient life across the galaxy. It turns out that not only are there no video games, but we were in a video game all along, and it was destroying our minds and breaking our spirits the entire time. All who learn this truth promptly commit suicide to escape the simulation, and those who do not continue suffering through a hellish existence as the programmed world they live in gets worse and worse and worse. The end.
I think you're right. I think that's the number 1. I think that's worse than just the sweet release of, hey, we're not here, rather than confronting the meaninglessness of an existence as a program in someone else's computer. I think we should all bring Sega back. I think we should all become console warriors for Sega and bring what you moved it back to number 8. That's the future. I think we can do it. I think that's what we need to aim for. Sega Dreamcast.
Bring Sega back, bring arcades back. Sega and Nintendo are the big kids on the block again, competing. I mean, we've just never gotten better than when they were competing. So maybe that is what we need, Sean. This really depressed me to write this, but I had fun.
I want a world where Sonic and Mario at the Olympics isn't called that because that's just what the Olympics are. It's like, what? How are the Olympics this year? Yeah, it's like, I think Sonic won.
Yeah. I mean, he is at a certain advantage because he is the fastest thing alive.
Yeah, he's very much at an advantage. Mario is a, fat plumber without a personality. And Sonic is a hero who, as you say, is the blue blur, the fastest thing alive, an athletic marvel. And Mario is going to die at like 60 from heart disease.
So anyway, write in and tell us which of these scenarios you think is most plausible. It's probably one of the ones in the top 5, sadly. We live in hell. But all right, Sean, for September, I decided we need a more fun monthly 10. So here's my task for you. In the spirit of my Jonathan Lack's new Street Fighter obsession, and my many other random and unexpected obsessions over the years, what are the top 10 unexpected things you think I will or should get into over the next few years? Now, you can make this what you think I will do or what you think I should do or a mix. I'm going to leave that up to you, whatever you think is funniest and works best. But basically, what will obsess me in some kind of top 10 list, a la Street Fighter?
I love this because I almost anticipated this when I said earlier that I never, would have bet on this. And so now I get to make some wild swings about, get into, I don't know, collecting stamps or some shit.
It's got to be more exciting than that. Come on.
It'll be more exciting than that. I'm trying to come up with one that I'm not actually going to use on my list because I don't want to spoil the list.
Yes.
But yes, I love this. I'm very excited to go through and really get deep into explore the psychology of one Jonathan Arlack, in the sordid recesses of your mind. And see what lies there, that, untapped potential.